Hey, ladies and gentlemen, yes, you saw that correctly. It's the Friday Night Movie Show because it's on Saturday night. It's now called the Saturday Night Movie Show, and it's episode 99, which means we're almost done. We're at episode 100 coming up here very soon. And because tonight we are here to talk about the absolute best movies that we saw this year. So, yes, this is going to be a positive show. I know Rob's here, and it seems weird, but we will have a positive show here for the best movies of 2024. And I have a lovely group of people joining me here tonight. Some faces that you guys have seen, some faces you haven't seen in a while. Sarah, some people who are also joining us here because we're here to talk about the absolute movies that brought us joy this year. So let's go ahead and go around the ticker here for a second. Our good buddy Christian Toto is back with us. How are you doing tonight, Christian?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well myself. And then, of course, you know, this guy down here, Mr. Robert Motto. How you doing, Rob?
I'm great. It was not a very good year for movies, but I'm here to be positive and looking forward to that.
And then making her quarterly appearance here on the show. Yes, it's been 3 to 4 months already. It's our good buddy Sarah. How you doing, Sarah?
I'm great. Happy to be here.
Glad to be here too. And as you can see, someone who just popped up here is our good buddy Leon Idol, aka Bolts of Words, aka Words of Paradise. Did I get that correct? At least two.
Yeah, you got that all correct. Thank you.
And of course, you can see here Iron Oxide is also with us too, but he was having some audio issues right before the show starts, so he'll be back with us just for a second. But we're all here, and we're all here to talk about a year of 2024 that. Oh, there he is. There he is. They're showing his face. How you doing there? I almost lost you there for a second. But no, we're talking about in 2024, and I kind of want to get this one out of the way. Now, obviously, we're just going to talk about the good movies this week. If you want to hear us talk about the absolute worst of the worst, it's going to be next Saturday's show. But this week, when you compared the best movies of the year versus the best movies of last year, I do feel like there was a vast improvement of last year's movie because, Christian, I know you said this yourself. When you were trying to do your list last year, you struggled with even finding like 5 movies that you think were even worthy of putting on a list. Was it more of a struggle or less of a struggle than last year to put a movie list together that were actually good?
A little bit less, but we were actually talking about this off air a little bit. I mean, some of my choices I don't think deserve to be here, but you have to kind of, register down a little bit. I just don't think they make great movies like they used to as much. And that sounds kind of curmudgeonly, but I think it's mostly true. But there were some films this year I genuinely liked a lot. And I think I'm looking forward to seeing them again. That's one of my barometers as far as, do I want to see this again? Will I experience it again? Will I get something new from repeat viewings? I think that's critical of great movies.
Yeah, Leon here. We were just talking off the air a little bit ago that you felt like this year was a much better year than the previous year. What do you think made this cinematic season a much better year than last year? Because I think a lot of people would agree that outside of a few films, like obviously Godzilla -1 was a big surprise. Oppenheimer was obviously I think everyone's top film of the year. It wasn't really that year that great of a year overall. Like it wasn't a solidly consistent year. Would you agree with that?
I don't know that it was. Here's what made this the best year in a long time. Horror films. There were some just fantastic indie horror films that got mainstream notoriety. Actually killed it at the box office, and I that was a saving grace. And also I'm the world's biggest Sonic the Hedgehog shill, and we got Sonic 3, so I'm biased.
That would it probably won't be on my list, but who knows? You guys may have it on some of your list there. But I will say it's a good movie.
Leaving the stream.
Yeah, link to the YouTube below. No, but that one is actually a film that I did really like. Now, people are saying that it's the best one. I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's between that one and the first one because I mean, the second one wasn't really that great, if we're being honest with ourselves. But I feel like that there was a lot more structure, and they shaved out all the bad stuff in the second one too. So
I loved the second one. Are you kidding me?
Second one is a better Sonic film in terms of like actually being accurate to the world of Sonic, but it is not as good a film as the first one, if that makes sense.
Right, but they didn't have to take the time with the character. Right in.
Either way, they fixed everything. The third one is the best, so I'll show that.
Haven't seen it yet.
Rob, what was your take on 2024 in the world of films? Because me and you, we sat through a lot of crap this season, but was the good stuff worth it? Was it more worthy than last year's films?
No. Of course, I'm going to have to be a contrarian here and go the other way. I actually really love 2023, but, and I was going back through my list. I mean, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, The Zone of Interest, The Holdovers. I know nobody saw Master Gardener, Paul Schrader's movie. Maestro, I really liked. I like Beau is Afraid. I like Sound of Freedom. I like The Iron Claw. But I just think the last year is better than the top 10 this year. But of course, that's I'm comparing the movies that I'm ranking that high. But there just was. I'll be honest. You're absolutely right about horror movies. Like most of my list is horror movies, and guess what? I hate horror movies as a rule, almost. But I thought that there was such creative injection of different horror movies, things that took you different places, that pushed different buttons. We'll get to that in my list, but I thought that they did a great job with small budget to medium budget horror movies just doing really well at the box office this year.
Can I ask you a quick question? Is Boy Kills World a 2023 or 2024 film? Because it came out, depending on your region, at the very end of 2023 or very beginning of 2024. I don't know what it's considered.
I would count it as a 2024 film just because of the region that it came out here, but it is kind of one of those like borderline movies. It's weird because I think it will probably be a movie that'll be on a couple of our lists. If it wasn't for a film that I just saw last night, it definitely would have been in my top 10. But we're going to talk about a buzzer beater #1 movie of the year that I saw this year that knocked everything down a peg, and that's all the hype that I'm giving here until we get to our list. Sarah,
nice.
Since it is your quarterly appearance, I want to catch up with you in a bit. How did you feel about the year of 2024 as far as movies go?
I think it was decent, but I agree with Rob that last year was better. I think for me, last year, even if the movies don't average out to being better, they were more exciting movies. Like I was really excited and surprised by Godzilla -1. But this year, like Dune Part 2 was really good, but I wasn't surprised by it being good. It was just what I expected, So it wasn't. I'm not complaining about it, but I do think the last year was like more exciting year for movies. But
let me ask you. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, and I guess the rest of the panel can talk about this as well. Do you think that there was a lack of anticipation for the bigger movies this year as compared to last year? Because I feel like there was a lot of anticipation for like movies like Oppenheimer. Like I feel like that was a big event that happened and kind of made the year feel bigger than it was. And me and Rob talked about this earlier this year that I think by the time we got to like the first half of the year was done, I think the only big film that we were pointing towards was like The Bike Riders, and it wasn't like a big epic. It was just a film that looked very interesting based on the trailer and ended up being a really solid film. Do you think that we lacked the anticipation for a big movie this season?
Yeah, like the blockbuster movies weren't quality movies, like really high quality movies. Like everyone really liked Deadpool 3, but it wasn't like Oppenheimer level filmmaking, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So like it's like the audiences and the critics don't like join together and have this big like movement of filmmaking kind of thing. So
I think for me, most of my list is all stuff that came out in the last like 2 or so months. I've like the first half of the year, I had nothing. I think The Bike Riders was the one movie I could, and it kind of squeaked onto my list. But I just thought there was just nothing profound or serious or consequential. Then as October drew near, we started getting some meatier stuff.
Yeah. I was going to cycle over to Iron Oxide there. I'm not sure if he's still there, if he just stepped away for a second.
Oh, I'm still here.
Okay. I was going to say, actually, just make it awkward, just ask you a question and you won't answer it at all. Let's see if that'd be
I'll be like in the other room. Oh yeah, they were great.
Yeah.
So I gotta agree with Leon. Horror movies, low budget, getting back to the nitty gritty of filmmaking. Basically, stole Hollywood's thunder this year. I'll say it without saying it. Terrifier.
Terrifier 3.
Here we go. Newest, greatest horror franchise we've seen in time. Character in Art the Clown back that we haven't seen in a while, and it's not that fearless kind of filmmaking that only horror movies can really.
It was funny because I heard like I was gonna say we heard basically like every like 3 out of the 4 words that you said, but we still kind of got what you were saying there about Terrifier 3. And I will say this.
Still having some mic problems. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's mic problems or like audio issues, but yeah, a little bit of a lag on that end real quick. And a couple things I want to note off of that. One, Brahmabull is in the chat with us here tonight. Also, Paulie Latino Slant joining us here tonight as well. I've heard from everyone that universally the horror films were much better than this year. At the same token, if you guys, we did a story on Bounding on the YouTube side of things, and I want to get your take on this one before we actually start talking about the best movies of the year. I guess, Christian, we can lead this one off of you. It seems like the horror genre was kind of something that was more of a fall phenomenon, and now we're seeing it like leak over to like December time. And this was a big debate that we had a couple of days ago, where it feels like the Christmas movies or the idea of a Christmas movie has kind of been phased out. It's been taken over by more horror themed movies, or essentially movies that seem like they're Christmas movies but actually aren't. Like I feel like Red One, which is the big one that came out late this year, promoted as a Christmas film. You watch it, it's like this is not a movie that I would take the kids to go see. This is not one that I'll be like, oh, let's go get in the van and go watch this movie and have a good. That's not the type of film that this was. Obviously, the Jack Black Dear Santa movie, certainly not a movie that I would go with my family. That age of like Elf, Jingle All the Way, the Santa Claus. Like it seems now as we're progressing more away from that time that was an era of like a bygone. Like I want to say, like almost like the bygone era of Christmas movies, where outside of maybe Hallmark and Great American Family, we're not really seeing those type of films anymore. Do you think that it's just not a mainstream draw the way it was 30 years ago? Do you think that the industry is purposely moving away from those type of movies?
I think the industry doesn't know how to make those movies, honestly. I mean, an exception was the best Christmas pageant ever, which I thought had a huge, big heart, and I enjoyed that quite a bit. But like, was it last year we had Violent Night, which was
I just saw it for the first time this Christmas season.
They-
That movie sucked.
Well, was it Violent Night or Silent Night? Because they're two very similar sounding movies.
David Harbour.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Did not care much for that one.
In Red One had like little snippets of sweetness, but it was so brimming with action and slap fighting that it just didn't feel like a Christmas movie, even though it technically was. So I'm a little cynical here, but Hollywood doesn't know how to really tell a sweet, soulful elf-like story. I don't think anymore. They're out of practice.
I wonder if it's because of like streaming services doing their own little like they do their family Christmas movies, and then we have the violent Christmas movies, and then we have the heartwarming Christmas movies. When before, when you had to put movies in theaters, you had to put all of that stuff into one movie, and that's where movies like Elf were. Like
That's what I kind of said on Tuesday, was that basically like Netflix and Hallmark Channel have their kind of a cornered market on that stuff that they just put on streaming services, or I don't know how Hallmark gets their stuff on. I'm assuming they just sell it to whoever wants it, but I kind of thought that, but at the same time, I this is a time when Oscar bait movies are out anyway. So any holiday themed movies have to compete with those anyway, but usually the stuff families are going to isn't necessarily like Oscar bait movies, but obviously it depends on what the movie is. So I've kind of have seen this trend too, but I'm also not the market for holiday movies usually.
Has anyone seen these? Like Netflix puts out a glut of Christmas movies just the last few weeks or so. Are any of them any good? Are they just quickie, cash grabs? What are they like? I
I mean, I'm not the target demographic for that. That seems like more of a Rachel question than me. But I don't know. Sarah, did you have any? I figured that these type of movies. Okay. Well, I can't even blame you on that aspect. So,
I mean, before we get into the Christmas movies, because you said something at the beginning to lead into that, and I actually think it's false. You said that a lot of the bulk of the horror films were released around October and the fall season. I would majorly push back on that, because Late Night with the Devil, Long Legs, Alien Romulus, all these were spring and summer films, actually.
Yeah.
So I don't think we actually.
I'll rephrase that then. I think they're generally marketed around the fall season. But yeah, we have seen movies like that, like earlier in the year. Like Long Legs is obviously a movie that was very raved about in our circle as well. That came out, I think, in May, if I'm not mistaken, around that time of the year. So, I mean, you do get those sprinkled in throughout the course of the year, but it feels like obviously with the fall year, that's where you get them the more marketed towards, the Terrifier 3 type films and stuff like that.
So I guess it just depends on, like, I think the ones you get around October are the what I would call like the cash grab horror films, like your Taros and things like that. Where it's like, oh, it's gonna be an unmemorable slasher film. Take your date and see if you can get some in the car afterwards, as opposed to the films, like the ones that are actually artistic, well-crafted movies that happen to be horror films. They don't sort of go into the theater using the Halloween gimmick of the time frame.
Wait, get some what?
I don't know. I don't know what the rules are on this channel. I'm still trying to debate whether I can say The Society of Magical Negroes is the best movie of the year.
It's not.
I'm clearly joking.
Yes, I know. I just need to say that.
Hey, you never know. Some people might be serious.
Well, I'm known for having some lofty pixels ass takes, so people might think I'm being serious when I say that.
Oh man, I haven't spoken to Lofty in a little bit. He needs to come back on here one day.
He does need to come back. I miss that guy.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about our best movies of the year. And Christian, I want to start off with you because I figure that outside of me, you're probably the only one with a full list of movies that we can go off of here. And Rob, because Rob watched a lot of movies. I just don't know how many of him have been on his good list. But if you have any honorable mentions, I think now would be the good time to mention those if you have enough of those. And we'll go ahead and start off with what you have here. I don't know how many you brought with us. What do you have, 10 or 5 or wherever the case may be? So
I think I've got about 10. I listed about 7 on my website. I kind of added a couple for this conversation. And again, I think some of these films are very good films. I don't think they should be in the running for this kind of conversation, but just that's where we are. I'll start with one that is very traditional. And I think I was ready to be burned out by it, was A Complete Unknown. And I feel like we've seen so many musical biopics, and I guess Dewey Cox kind of slashed and burned through
everything.
All those cliches. But I just found this wonderful. And I just felt such joy in the theater, and I had a kind of a rough year, but it was such a pleasant experience, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm not even a big Bob Dylan fan, but I think I love the 60s. And I relish the fact that this was an artist who just did what he wanted to do, followed his own muse, didn't want to run with the crowd. And sometimes he was a jerk for it. But I thought they really kind of honored the fact that Dylan has been so inscrutable over the years. Inscrutable, hard to figure out. And I think Chalamet did a great job. And there were a few cliched moments that seemed annoying. Like you turn on the TV and all of a sudden JFK gets shot. Oh yeah, that's such a biopic cliche. But I just found it mesmerizing. The music was great. I think he sang all the songs, and he sings enough like Dylan. It's not exactly a hard voice to imitate, but yeah, exactly. We could all spend about a half an hour in the recording studio and come up with a passable Dylan. So yeah, that was my favorite film of the year. I just felt joy watching it, and it in an age where there's so few artists who are true to themselves, and everyone's kind of out for a buck, and everyone's kind of looking to cash in on X, Y, and Z, and Hollywood doesn't have any cojones. I just felt this was a step in the right direction.
It's going to get to a point where at some point we have to explain to our children how we went from Bob Dylan to Sexy Red, and it's not going to be a comfortable conversation for anyone.
Awesome.
I mean, to be fair,
What's
Dylan's
really
re-
surreal is you have
Both are awful.
Yeah,
By the way,
thank you.
you
Both
have-
like I love music biopics. Rocket Man's one of my favorite movies of the last 10 years, but
I'm sorry.
I loathe Bob Dylan so much that even though I love this type of movie, I will not watch this particular one because it's Bob Dylan.
What's insane is Edward Norton was on the Joe Rogan podcast like 5 years ago. I forget how long ago, but enough where this is interesting, where he's talking about Dylan at 2021, rejecting Pete Seeger and the hey, be our activist, be the voice of what we're trying to achieve here. And he's like, no, I don't want to be what you want me to be. I want to do my own thing. I want to blaze my own trail. So I'll get to it. It's also in my top 10, but I really enjoyed going to the theater to see this.
Do you want me to read some more on my list, or?
Yeah, like I said, this is your
Okay.
time to go.
Okay. My list is really, it's not like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm just going to spit them out and you can kind of judge from there. I thought Am I Racist was excellent. I know the director, Justin Folk. He's a very talented guy. He just makes movies look good on a very, very small budget. I like that about him, but I just thought it was provocative. And it was very funny and very cleverly constructed. There were some weak spots for sure, but the fact that Matt Walsh is, he doesn't really have charisma. He's so dry, but it's such an oddly perfect match for this material. And I think that some of the best documentaries will kind of shake up the zeitgeist, form the zeitgeist. I mean, even an Inconvenient Truth, I'm not a Al Gore acolyte, but that movie did change the conversation about climate change. And I think that in a way, we've seen a lot of things happen with DEI in the last few weeks. And I don't think it's a complete accident that this was part of that conversation. So I thought that was excellent. And good for the Daily Wire for putting it in theaters and not just keeping it behind their paywall. If you want to impact the culture, you got to be within the culture. And I get it from a monetary point of view, why they keep things to themselves. They want to get subscribers, but this was a smart idea to get this in theaters.
Yeah.
One of my other choices is, I'll probably get made fun of here. And I don't think I know enough about movie musicals. It's just not my genre, but I thought Wicked just checked every box.
Wicked was great. It's okay. Don't be ashamed. Wicked's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it looked beautiful. The songs are great. Cynthia Erivo's got a magnificent voice. Jeff Goldblum, not so much. The story is complicated. I just heard Andrew Clavin singing its praises and then saying how morally twisted it was. And I probably have to see it again to kind of see what he was talking about and maybe really appreciate it. So I'll leave that aside. But I thought it was entertaining, engaging. And listen, we're living in an age where the anti-heroes are the main characters and we deconstruct villainy. And I do have some problems with that on paper. I mean, I've seen Broadway's version of Wicked. I kind of forget it. I kind of have to see where the movie goes in Wicked the Good Part 2. But I just thought it's everything you'd want in this kind of production. And Ariana Grande, I thought was excellent. I mean, to me, it was as good as the press tour was creepy. And that's my highest compliment.
Yeah, I'll say this. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. This one's not going to be on my best list. I'm just going to say it right now. There's a spoiler.
Another film that I think famously the second half isn't as good as the first, but I just thought it was so mesmerizing. And so it just felt like an epic like they used to make, is The Brutalist. Adrian Brody is spectacular here. I think he might be the favorite for Best Actor, even though Timothée Chalamet is so good. And there's other great choices too, but it just felt sprawling. The canvas was so wide and so beautiful. And then I heard one person said it was $8 million to make or something around there, which is staggering. Because not that there are great special effects or it's been in a million different countries, but it just feels lush and rich and like an expansive story that needed to be told. And I think if you can make it for that much money, I mean, I think maybe the next 10 years, Hollywood either figures out how to rein in their budget. So they're in trouble, because if you watch this and then you watch Godzilla -1 and you think, my gosh, how do they do so much with so little? It can be done. And I almost think that Hollywood is they just throw money at things rather than thinking them through. So for all those reasons, I just thought it was a really terrific film and certainly worth seeing. And it's a butt number. It's like 3.5 hours. There is an intermission if you haven't seen it yet. So just be warned.
I was just going to say that real quick. And this is a movie that we were talking about too. I'm not saying it's a bad film. Obviously, I haven't seen it, but yeah, 3.5 hours is a tough sell for a lot of people.
Yep.
The last 3.5 hour movie that I endorsed, I think, was The Irishman. That was like
Mhm.
2019, right? So,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not saying that that movie can't be 3.5 hours and be good, but like I said, I think that only appeals to kind of film nerds like us. It's hard to get that a bigger
I
sell to a
agree.
much wider audience. So,
And you know, that also explains why the budget maybe was so low. I mean, that's just smart, but it doesn't
Yeah.
look like a low budget affair. That's what counts. I really enjoyed A Real Pain. It's a buddy comedy drama. It's about two Jewish cousins. They're best of friends, even though they're oil and water, and they go to Poland to visit their grandma's home. She had passed away recently, and they're going with a tour of other Jewish citizens and touring these really tough spots and you know, regarding Poland and the Holocaust and you know, what happened in Nazi Germany. And it's just smart and it's interesting and it's thoughtful and it's just good. You know, to me, it shouldn't be on my best of list, but I just didn't find so many films that were so magnificent that this one got crowded out. But I also have to give a lot of credit. This does a lot of things that are very complicated: friendships, disagreements, cultural issues. You know, and just the fact that it came out in 2024, where Jews are being persecuted across not just the world but the country here. It landed even better for me. So that's one of my list.
did see this one, by the way. Thought it was a really good movie. Like I said, just missed an honorable mention for me, but yeah, I liked it a lot. So,
Yeah, good stuff. This is Jesse Eisenberg, who's the star.
well, I
and
usually hate in
director.
everything.
Yeah,
He's a talented
I
guy.
think Jesse Eisenberg's
Yes.
Oh, come
fantastic
on.
guy.
He's a good actor.
Zombieland.
but yeah, he's been in some stuff that's not too good.
Yeah,
Mm.
and he's a little bit too the same, but this, you know, this played to his strengths. I really enjoyed Saturday Night, and again,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
this one felt weird because Saturday Night Live is so bad and so corrupt and so twisted and so far afield of what it once was. But I thought the movie really did capture the anarchy and the spirit and the sense of anything goes that were so important to the show's early years. I thought it was funny. I thought it was charming. I thought it was insightful, and you know, I love the fact that they cast actors who sort of looked like the figures they were playing and sort of sounded like the figures they were playing, but didn't go for dead mimicry. I thought it kind of let you get lost in the process without really nitpicking. Oh, John Belushi doesn't sound exactly like that. I thought it was really a very wise choice. So I miss Saturday Night Live. It's part of my past. I mourn the fact that the show has basically been dead for 10, 15 years at least. And you'd think that the people on the show now would watch this movie and think, boy, we're doing it all wrong, but they are. But I guess they don't have that self-awareness. But I thought it was a very good film.
Real quick, my problem with this film is not even about the film itself. I think the film is really good, but my problem is that it's a story about SNL in 1975 told in the lens of like 2025, essentially, right? So it's like, who's really your target audience here for this film? Because anyone who remembers what SNL was like 50 years ago is probably
Boomer.
not even alive for
Yeah,
one thing. Right?
My mom was literally 19 years old when the first season of Saturday Night Live came out. So,
Mhm.
and look, I grew up loving Saturday Night Live. And I would agree, it probably was getting bad, maybe 2010, 2012,
Mhm.
second Obama, run.
Well, I think my favorite quote of the last few years was Jay Farrow, who's a very talented comedian. He played Obama briefly on the show or part of the run or something.
Mhm.
And he said later, looking back about SNL's approach to the president, he said they gave up on the Obama thing, which I thought was so smart and true and wise. They did. And then they gave up on comedy. So I'm going to put the Bike Riders on this list. Again, it's a very good movie, not great, good performances all around. Starting to really like Austin Butler. He was terrific in Elvis, and I think he's quite good here. It had some weak spots. There were things I'd like to change about it, but I just thought it was one of those effective time and place movies with a story that was intriguing and a lot of good tension. Yeah. And maybe the fact that I used to love Sons of Anarchy, it had a little bit of that, that style to it. So I enjoyed that as well.
All right, what's your next one?
Let's see. Again, it's not a great film, but I think it's a great B movie. It's called Land of Bad. And it's, it's a war film. It's got some actors who aren't superstars, although I think Russell Crowe just steals the movie. And he's basically sitting in a chair the whole time. He's like a drone operator type. I just thought it was exactly what an action movie on a low budget should be. Smart, different, exciting, intriguing. And again, Russell Crowe is just so good in the role. He's not the star. He's a co-star, maybe I guess you could say maybe a supporting actor, even though no one will ever mention him for that kind of award. But it just really surprised me. And even the action scenes didn't feel cookie cutter. I felt like there was something new and fresh to what they brought. So that one made my list. Another one that I think no one saw is Between the Temples. It's a very odd movie about a man who's going through something really deeply personal and struggling, and he bonds with an older Jewish woman played by Carol Kane, and their connection and their friendship, and maybe something else is developing there. I just thought it was beautiful and sweet. I guess you could say the companion piece here is Nobody Wants This, the Netflix series, which I absolutely loved with Kristen Bell. But this is just a sweet movie and just kind of caught me by surprise. I think more people should hear about it and watch it. And again, it's a prototypical indie movie that has no budget, is going to make no money, and that very few people will see. But I think it'll have a nice shelf life when people discover it on Netflix and elsewhere. And I think I might have one more. Dune Part 2. I don't love these movies, but I admire the hell out of them. They're just so interesting. They're so beautiful. They're so sweeping. I never read the book. I'm not part of the Dune cult, but I get why this is such an important piece of filmmaking in a way from a science fiction point of view. It seems like there's so much in there. It's so dense. It's beautifully constructed, great performances, some flaws as well. But I think I admired it more than I liked it, but I can't help but put it on this list.
I just want to come because you said you're not part of like the Dune, sphere, as far as like being a fan of the books. The Dune series is my favorite books of all time, and as I loathe this film because it is so detrimental to the first film was so accurate to the source material, and I thought would be impossible. So when they made the second film, I was like, great, we're going to get the second half of the book adapted properly, and they completely butcher it. So while objectively it's a very well made film, and I can appreciate that. Mm-hmm. I loathe this film for how it just destroys the source material.
Hey, did you get a sense of why the director did that? I mean, why would he change gears so aggressively? It seems like if he did one this way, it would naturally flow that he'd follow that same blueprint.
As much as I hate boiling everything down to modernity and DEI, like for example, in the film, you have Chani gives up on Paul, leaves him at the end, things to that effect. In the book, she is ride or die. No matter what, she stands by her man. She understands the decisions he makes are tough ones. Paul is not the bad guy by the end of the first book. That doesn't come about till the second book. They fast track that to this one, which again changes the lore. They're actually supposed to have already had an infant child that gets murdered by the Empire, which is one of the big reasons for the war in Iraq and the rise up. They completely omit that. They do some sort of weird faction stuff where there being two different factions of Iraqians. Of the Fremen. I mean, all these unnecessary changes that again only serve to, at least by my viewpoint, fill these check boxes of modernity, or they were too afraid to commit to certain things because the book does get dark, and it is such a shame because the Dune books are. Again, it's my favorite series of all time, so I'm biased, but
no, interesting perspective. I didn't know the source material enough to know that.
Right.
But again, objectively, it is a beautifully made film. I cannot take away from a filmmaking perspective how well done it is.
Gotcha. Well, I think that's it for me.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like we're gonna have some interesting opinions on Dune Part 2, especially when we get to Sarah here in a little bit. But I guess at this point we'll go ahead and swing things over to our good buddy Leon here. This is your time to shine. So I don't know if you have a list or if you prepared the list or not, but you just want to generally talk about.
I was like, oh man, where I did, because I thought it was just gonna be a sort of free flow one. I was like, okay, I gotta get a list together real quick. But before I get into it though, I want to say that this not only did horror very much surprise me this year, but so did the comeback of popcorn flicks, like just true blue. Go to the theater with your family, have a fun time. It does not need to be a good movie. It needs to be a fun experience. And so we can all sit around and talk about films like Saturday Night. I think all cinephiles would agree that that's a well-made film. All cinephiles would say the same thing about Dune 2. I think it's like kind of important to spotlight the quote-unquote normie films that have been, in my opinion, better than in previous years because of again, I think we are getting back on track with at least what makes movies fun again. So my honorable mentions, I've got through 5 honorable mentions. Beetlejuice, again, not a good film, but a love letter to Beetlejuice fans. Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, again, just had so much fun. I went to see it with my grandma, and she adored it. Deadpool and Wolverine, you knew exactly what you were going to get with it. It didn't need to be a masterpiece. But then two that are honorable mentions for me because I do not think they're good, but everybody else seems to, so I feel like they're worth at least mentioning. Nosferatu and Heretic.
What was your? Let me ask you about Heretic. 'Cause I did a deep dive on that one for both Bounding and my site too. I did it on the Bounding. I'm not Bounding, the Bible and show on Sunday. What was it that caught you about Heretic that you thought was really nice?
My issue with Heretic. First of all, I went to school for theology and like theological philosophy. So I love studying religion, specifically Christianity, but really just any religion and whatnot. And the problem with Heretics is that in the third act, it falls apart. It is so philosophically inconsistent and incorrect. I think maybe if they had just stuck to Mormonism instead of trying to do blanket Christianity, they could have made some better, more concise arguments or points. But yeah, the first two acts were great. There's great suspense. You got just three characters, and the movie is built on the strength of them, and then just the moral quandaries. They're easy to answer. They fall apart. You can't hold water to the arguments that Hugh Grant's making. It's bad. The third act, in my opinion.
I completely agree. And also, I thought Hugh Grant was terrific, and he's the whole movie.
He was.
But this is a movie that just falls apart. On a lot of levels. So I couldn't agree more.
See, my biggest flaw with Heretic is that you mentioned they're like it frames Mormonism as kind of like the central hub for Christianity. So when it's attacking the Christian religion, it's doing so through the lens of two Mormon girls, right? And that's kind of to expose them as like, oh, they don't really actually believe like what they believe, and there's a lot of flaws into it. And my big counterpoint is this: like, I don't believe Mormonism is really Christianity to begin with, but in order for the very much so. But here's the problem. If they were to do actual Christianity and not have the Mormonism aspect of it, then essentially you have two Christian leads who are sympathized for, because you have this psychopath who's basically like physiologically and psychologically torturing these women throughout the course of the film, which leads to a greater conclusion. I feel like they didn't want to come to that conclusion where it's like, oh yeah, all of a sudden we're accidentally telling a story of Christian persecution, and that's not going to go very well. So because of the route that they probably should have taken, they led to him taking another route, and I think that's a bigger reason why that film pushed apart.
Do you think it was intentional that they did that, or do you think it was a fundamental misunderstanding of, again, Christian philosophy, and so they just wrote it poorly on accident?
I can tell from like the dialogue, especially like when what's the name? Hugh Grant's character is kind of like, criticizing the central parts of like certain religions, saying that, oh, well, people thought about this like 2,000 years ago, like before Christ and whatnot. It's like, that's a common argument that many like non-believers have, because they think like Christianity started with Jesus Christ and nothing else before that. And it's like, well, there was actually like thousands of years of books and history and all that before the birth of Christ. Like, things were kind of leading up to that. But in the mind of a non-believer, they don't understand that concept. They just think that, oh, it just started with a guy named Jesus 2 years ago. They move on from there. So I could tell just from the way that they wrote the movie that it was probably written from people who were critics of religion but didn't really understand the religions that they were criticizing at the point of the film. So that was my big disconnect.
I would be inclined to agree with that. Yeah.
So that's your honorable mention. So if you got some other movies you want to let us know about, go ahead.
So these are in no particular order except the top three I'll save for last. But Inside Out 2, honestly, as someone who has been a massive critic of Disney, who has loathed Disney for years now because of everything they've been pulling behind the scenes, their political agendas, Inside Out 2 was incredibly refreshing. It was a movie that I would not have a problem sitting down with my kids and watching. So I was very just impressed by it. I genuinely liked the film. Terrifier 3, again, that was just hearkening back to good old 80s slasher fun, but on, again, the low indie budget, that the complete creative control of the filmmaker, because there's no way the studio was going to let him do what he wanted to do. And I think it was made on like a $5 million budget or something, like something insanely small.
Yep.
Very
Just
akin to a
under five.
Godzilla -1. What was it?
Just under 5.
Just under 5. And again, it's another Godzilla -1 story. But again, for those that love, and I don't usually like slashers, mind you. I think frankly, that's a cheap way to do horror. But you've got such an interesting, eclectic character in Art the Clown that you actually do have. It's worth looking deeper into than like a Jason or a I don't even remember the guy from Halloween. So
Michael
Myers.
Myers.
Michael Myers, thank you. Boy Kills World, another movie, frankly, a film I think should have gotten so much more love. The
It wasn't a
choreography-
very well marketed movie. I think that was his
It was
biggest
not.
problem. Is like the marketing was not there, but it was actually a really fun movie.
Yeah, it's fun. The choreography is fantastic. The majority of the jokes I do think land without it necessarily being a comedy movie. It's like it's an action film first with comedic moments. Yeah, there's flaws in it. Story ain't exactly airtight. Every single twist I saw coming. I say every single twist. There's like two, but yeah, saw both of them coming. It's very predictable. It's very cliche, but again, it just harkens back to the old 1980s Jackie Chan movies. Like I love Wheels on Meals or Rumble in the Bronx. So like I got that vibe from this, but with the fantastic gimmick of the main character can't speak, so he hears inner monologue through a comedic voice. It's again very unique film. Alien Romulus, not a good movie whatsoever, but I got everything I wanted out of it. I wanted to see Fede Alvarez kind of do with Alien what he did with Evil Dead, and I got that. So 100% worth the ticket price just because you know what you're going in, you get what you're going into. Am I Racist was so great. I really enjoyed seeing people walk out the theater. I also I was the first one in when to my viewing, and so as people were coming in, I was counting the man to woman ratio because I figured it'd be a very male dominated film. There was only 3 less women than men in the whole theater. I think there was 32 people or whatever by the time, including myself. So and also a lot of Mexicans and 2 blacks. I was very interested to see the racial disparity as well. Like I just wanted to do numbers like that.
Hey,
And
look, there's my African American over there.
So yeah, am I racist? With
Oh, look at my African American over here. Look at him. Are you the greatest?
10 feet
You know what I'm
taller.
talking about? Okay. So we have.
Are you the greatest?
what was I gonna say? I think that it actually is too long and does drag a bit. I don't think it is as rewatchable as the one he did about trannies. What is a woman?
What is a woman?
I am a woman. Yeah.
yeah. But all in all, I'm very happy that I got the theatrical experience for Am I Racist? Twisters, just harken back to the 90s. I love the original Twister. I know it's not good, but frankly, again, Twisters just gave me everything I wanted to give, and I was so surprised. I thought I would hate it. My aunt wanted to see it. It's like, all right, I'll go with you, and I walked out supremely surprised. And then Godzilla Kong, and because I'm a shill for Godzilla, massive Godzilla fan. But the 2 films that actually I think are masterpieces that stuck out, that are the best films of the year, Long Legs and Late Night with the Devil. I mean, both of those films just blew me away in terms of their originality, how well crafted the stories were, the revitalization of horror. Long Legs and Late Night with the Devil are some of the best movies I've seen in a very long time. And I already talked about Sonic 3 earlier, so.
Nice. All right, we'll move on to our good buddy here, Aaron. Someone said Aaron Oxide. It's like your name's Aaron now. Just
Aaron
roll with
Oxide.
it. Yes. Iron Oxide.
Hey,
Let me ask you this, guy. I
that's
feel
cool.
like you're going to have a lot of horror films in your top 10. Is that safe to say, or?
very safe to say. Actually, I didn't see a whole lot of the films being mentioned here. Saturday night, I wanted to see, but again, I saw the trailer and that just turned me off because they were modern day, that decade. When I was a kid, when I was in preschool, and they asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And my answer was, I want to be on Saturday Night. So,
And how long was your detention sentence after that?
still ongoing. But
I don't know
here's
how
the
old
thing.
you are, but you've already outlived John Belushi, so you're doing well because you look kind of similar. So
It didn't take long.
Yeah. No, that was not a high bar.
Let's see. I'm gonna go a little bit out of order. I want to kind of argue with Leon here. I think Alien Romulus was fine. Was it a great movie? No, but it was a love letter to the original Aliens movie, and I enjoyed the shit out of it.
Oh,
I
for
thought it
the
was
first
great.
half of the movie, I would totally agree with you. It's when it stops being a horror film and becomes an action film a la Aliens instead of Alien. That's when I
Well,
sort of lose
because
my love
I
for it.
mean, you're right, and you're completely right there. But again, they were just kind of trying to sow all of that, member berries and Alien. Remember Alien and the horror, and now remember Aliens and the action. Here it all is, right here. But the conventional effects were so good.
I mean, the effects again. I think Fede Alvarez is probably the best horror director on the scene right now. So yeah, I completely agree.
I don't know. We got Leon with Terrifier.
He's in the running. He was when I
Oh.
said that, I was like, man, I gotta mention Leon though. Like, yeah, no, I agree. The two are both
Leon
masters of their craft.
is killing it. And right now in the rumor mill is that he is in top place to direct either Constantine or Zatanna for Warner Brothers. So we'll see if that actually pans out.
Also, Robert Eggers is up there, even though I found Nosferatu disappointing. Robert Eggers has never failed, in my opinion. Nosferatu might be his most disappointing, but yeah, another just when it comes to horror.
Now, I haven't seen Nosferatu yet. I wish I did. I just, didn't yet.
I think it's his weakest film. It's not bad. I think it's his weakest film.
Yes, it is.
Why is I wasn't in love with Nosferatu like most people. What did you not like about it? I'm curious.
What did I not like?
Or any of you guys.
Rob, go for it first. By all means, I'm wondering if you and I have very similar criticisms.
So, there's a lot of things. I mean, I hate Robert Eggers. Let me just throw that out there. I hate his visual style. I hate that he's a hack and he doesn't know any cinematic language outside the 1920s or 1930s. I mean, I get it. I've done my own, education, and it's like so let me just get that out of the way.
It's kind of harsh.
This is a movie that basically has a, I don't know, borderline girl / teenager promising herself to this, evil entity, who basically mind rapes her for 2 hours, and then
by accident, to be fair,
Lily Rose Depp.
Yeah, I mean, but that's
in the press, basically like, oh, it's about desire. I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe we just didn't see the same movie. I don't know. It's weird that you're saying that in press interviews when it's like she literally only does this whole thing to kill him, like in the original movie, in the original story. So it's like, okay, I just have a problem with the movie itself. The first half was fine. There's some really beautiful shots, like getting into the carriage and stuff. It's not without its merits, but the fucking stupid mustache on Count Orlok is so bad. It's so bad. It looks like Robotnik. I didn't see any of the Sonic movies, but he looks like robot, and you can't even tell it's Bill Skarsgård. He's hidden by all the cloak and the darkness, and there's just so many other ways I would have preferred it to go. But the acting is melodramatic and a bit over the top. Lily Rose Depp looks like a model for long periods of time, and then she's really good, and then she turns into Linda Blair from The Exorcist. So there's just a whole litany of things I have an issue with. But if you liked it, hey, or had less problems with it, hey, cool.
No. You actually said something that I really agree with, in that the first half is. I actually really do like the first half of the film. Because it is very claustrophobic, anxiety-inducing. It's very it is singular character oriented for a long time. The horror elements that are there are very visceral, or not visceral. It's very visceral, very psychological. And then once you pass the halfway point and it leaves the castle and actually goes out into the German town, you lose all sense of that claustrophobia and vulnerability, and it effectively, the film takes on an entirely new tone that I think ruins it. Not only that, I love the original 2022 Nosferatu film. It was one of my favorite movies of all time, and that movie was an hour and a half. Like it's 108 minutes or something like that. This movie effectively tells the exact same story, but over the course of about 2.5 hours. There is a lot of bloat in this bitch. There really is. That being said, Willem Dafoe is a saving grace in that second half because he is the only character that I think is committed to kind of honoring the Van Helsing character that he plays throughout all the literature. So there's one bright spot in the second half.
Oh, two things before I swing it back to Iron here. One, it feels like Willem Dafoe's like in every movie that came out this year. I feel like there's like 6 that I can name off the top of my head that he was in that came like. Stop it. The second one, in terms of Nosferatu, the one line from the film that they replayed to hell in the promotional for this one, which made no sense to me whatsoever, is the line that's like, "It's a force stronger than evil." It's like, so it's good. Because good's the only force that's stronger than evil, so it's like I don't think you guys thought that one through at all. But they just kept replaying it over and over again. Every time it was like, stop. I don't know. That's a whole other sidebar conversation with me, though. But,
it's supposed to be love, but again, that
What?
you know,
I'm so
like I said, love comes from good, right?
the people selling this as
Not
the
always.
idea are like in necrophilia. Like I don't understand what's going on here, because it's like I every time I see somebody who's just like who loves Nosferatu, it's like, or gets wrapped up into its messaging, I'm like, okay, but what is that messaging? That again, it's the same story of the woman sacrifices herself to defeat evil, to defeat this guy, and it's like, it's not about some forbidden romance,
massive
fucking creepy weirdos. And trust me, I like perverse cinematic ideas. That's just like, I'm sorry, you people are weird. That's just way too far for me to even entertain. Is like, no, the movie isn't even about that. It's about, again, this guy being defeated.
Regardless of whether you like the film or not, not you specifically, but like the royal you, anyone with any sort of media literacy should be able to tell that it's not a love story. I mean, okay, if you want to talk about the romance between Lily Rose Depp and Nicholas Hoult, like, okay, there's real love there, but the movie it's not she doesn't love Count Orlok. This isn't like a forbidden romance a la Romeo and Juliet or whatever. It is a story of black and white, good versus evil. Now, whether they execute that properly or not, you can have the debate. I really don't think they did personally, but you could at least have that debate. But it's not a love story.
Yeah. I think what Iron was alluding to there, I think that's lust. I don't think that's love. We have a conversation about that one.
I'm not saying Iron said that. I've talked to
I was playing off of what Iron said earlier, not what you said.
Gotcha.
Iron, you got some more movies for us?
let's see. I'm gonna try to be a little outside the box here. Like I said, I did like Alien Romulus, conventional effects, love letter to the original movies. Was it a great movie? Not at all. But I enjoyed the shit out of it. Another one I haven't heard mentioned here, Arcadia with Nicolas Cage.
That is good.
Nice little monster flick, post-apocalypse. Had a good time. Enjoyed the shit out of that. Terrifier, of course. And if we want to go into documentaries, I mean, this wasn't released in theaters, but Super / Man, the Christopher Reeve documentary. Fantastic. I mean,
it was released limited in theaters in my city, but
it's on
man,
Max.
I want to see it.
By the way, right now, if you want to see it.
Oh, really? Oh, I will have to watch. Yeah, because it was a
it's
limited
fantastic.
showing, and I had to work while it was showing, so I didn't get to see. Like even the trailer to that had me welling up.
It hurts.
welling
It
up.
hurts bad.
That's what I call a cinematic punch right in the feels.
Yep. It gets you. It gets you hard. Let's see. Well, that didn't
Framing.
sound right, but you know what I mean. Another one. In a Violent Nature, the first-person horror flick shot from the killer's perspective. Low budget, badly acted, so much fun. Great. Fucking love it.
Okay, I was curious. I didn't give that one a watch because it looked like shit. I won't lie, but
It is
if it's
shit
fun,
in the best possible way.
okay, I
Watch
might
it.
end up watching it because I don't like
so
it.
much fun.
If it's so
So
bad,
is it
it's
just
Man,
So is it just 80 minutes of like a guy stumbling around from like Jason Voorhees' perspective? Like, is that what it is?
There is a lot of that.
Yes and no. Here's the thing, man. When the best horror movies we got are fucking Terrifier, which is fantastic, and then you go into Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey Part 2, and then this, it's actually good. It's it's shot well, and the story's actually pretty concise, considering it is a slasher movie, and the whole point of the movie is just to show it from the killer's perspective, nothing else. But it's great. I mean, you get yourself cringing a lot of time, like, oh god, don't But I really enjoyed it. There weren't a lot of other, like, I can't remember who said it, but last year Godzilla should have gotten Best Picture. That was 2023's best movie I've seen.
It definitely deserved a nomination more than all the other films last year that weren't Oppenheimer. So I'll say that.
Absolutely. This year, we're starting to see that pendulum is starting to swing
back.
them, making movies that we want to see instead of making movies they want us to see. So we'll see.
Fortunately, you're still going to get a lot of those movies though, and this year was no exception.
Oh, absolutely, because they've already been in the can and already in production. So.
All right,
that's what I got. I'll let you guys go.
All right. Well, before we head off to Sarah here, which we got to say goodbye to our good buddy Christian, who had a brief time with us here, giving us his best films, and I'll go ahead and get you with the floor here. So, front and center, you can tell everyone what you're working on. I mean, you're on so many things that you're working on. We want to have you on the bar room one of these weeks, but obviously time zones and family stuff is like, I gotta get you when I can get you. So,
my life is crazy. I have to say that. So
yeah,
I have to cook 2 different lunches now, and actually, I think 3, one for me, one for my 2 boys. But yeah, so I'm doing work with The Blaze, with the Daily Wire, my YouTube channel. You just search for Hollywood in Toto. We're revving up pretty big time in 2025. I kind of got my feet wet last year, I guess you could say now. And my website is hollywoodintoto.com. So I appreciate you guys letting me share my thoughts and not laughing at my picks.
Yeah, I mean, we'll laugh after you leave. That's what we're going to get.
As well, you should.
I was laughing at you. I just muted my mic.
See, that's respect. I appreciate it.
Like, this guy picked the Wicked. Is he out of his mind? Oh, he's still on. Sorry. Hey,
dork.
Well, like I said, anytime we've got to have you back, and who knows, when I get Movie House ready to go later on this year, I might have you on a couple times for that show. So
sounds good. Yeah, I got beat up in high school. What you guys can do, good nothing. So I'm safe in my studio.
It's nothing but words. Yeah. I've been in the churches.
They hurt a little bit less.
But thank you very much for joining us, taking time with us here, man. We appreciate it.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. All right, then I guess we can move this young lady over here to the side right there. You see what I did, young lady? I put you over. See? There you go. How you doing, Sarah?
Very nice. All right. Are you ready?
Lay it
I
out.
was trying to remember what movies I even saw. Guys.
Oh yeah.
Oh boy.
Well, okay, let's start at the bottom. I want to mention Bike Riders as an honorable mention because I just saw it 2 nights ago, I think. And I immediately was like, well, that's not really good enough to be in my top 5 or 10 or whatever. But it's kind of sticking with me, so maybe, I don't know, maybe it will later. I really liked all the performances, and I liked seeing all those actors, like vaguely recognizable actors all together, just being in scenes together. And I really like the director. I love his style and the kinds of movies that he likes to make. But I just didn't vibe with the characters that much. It seemed like Austin Butler's character was a little distant, and I couldn't really ever care what happened to him or anything, but it was a really well-made movie. So number 5, I have Alien Romulus.
Based.
I wasn't really sure what to expect, but I did really enjoy it. Some of the stuff bothered me. The CGI Ian Holm, that bothered me a lot. And
it bothered me that they didn't need to do that.
Yeah, it was not unnecessary. And there was also
or when they did the read the Ripley line, like line for line, word for word.
Terrible.
Yeah,
Oh, see that wouldn't have
Oh,
bothered me
yeah,
if he didn't
that
deliver it
almost
so
ruined the movie
badly.
for me.
yeah, like that almost
And
like
I liked
ruined
it.
how fun the movie was because it had its own kind of flavor up until then, even and it felt like just a really solid alien movie. Like it was way better
Mhm.
than whatever the one with Jesse Smollett was. That was awful.
Yep.
So I was like really vibing with it, and then I was like, "Yeah, you have to put that stuff in there," but yeah, the girl Kaylee Spaney was really good. The guy that played the robot, her brother, was really good actor. I really enjoyed his shifts and characters. Um, the stuff with the gravity bothered me because that's not how like astrodynamics works, but it did make for some good sequences. So sorry, yeah. Really liked the kind of vintage style that it was, but still with like modern budget. So number 4, I have Caddo Lake from I think it was an HBO original, and it's like um it's not marketed as a time travel movie. I think it's supposed to be a twist, but it's a time travel movie, kind of like in the vein of like Dark from Netflix. If anybody's seen that,
Love
it's like
Dark. That's one of my
yeah,
favorite shows
it's
ever made.
so good. So Caddo Lake has kind of like dark vibes to it. They like go to a place and it like sends them into a certain place in time, and you can only travel whenever the water's low for some reason. And it's like a family drama spanning time, and like there's like a missing person, and so it's like a mystery, and you kind of don't really know that it's time travel until like halfway through the movie. But Dylan O'Brien's a really good actor. He's a really good uh he's very watchable. Anything that he's in is like very watchable. But the story also is really good. So I really enjoyed that. I watched it again with my dad, and then later he was like, "Man, I want to watch that again now that I know what the twist is." Because it's very rewatchable movie. Not like groundbreaking in any way, but very enjoyable. Number
I'll have to
3,
check that out.
I have The
never
Fall
seen it.
Guy.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I
Caddo Lake.
knew Rob would have an opinion on that.
No, it's fine. I mean, people can have whatever they want. Just fall. I was sitting there watching it like months after it was in the theaters, and just like, I'm so glad I didn't have to sit through this. It's terrible. And there was like an hour and a half to go. That's how
What,
like
The
it
Fall
was.
Guy?
Just, yeah. Oh, it's.
I have not met one person
So,
that didn't have fun.
It did
in
lead
that
me to
movie.
Kiss's version of "I Was Made for Loving You, Baby." You know, so that's great.
Oh, I liked the cover version of that too in there, the
Yeah, I
slower
didn't.
version. I agree that it was like a mess and really long. It should have been an hour and a half a movie, and it was like what, over 2 hours probably, right?
Yeah, 2.5,
So
close to 2.5, I think.
yeah, it was ridiculously long. They should have cut it down a lot, and it was also kind of messy. Like I also watched the director's cut or something, and he like ruined some of the jokes from the original cut by like extending them, and it was just you could tell that the writing was not like focused. They should have done a couple more passes on the script probably. But I really like the concept. I really enjoyed the chemistry with Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt. I really like the cheesiness of it. That's just kind of like I vibe with that sort of thing. So um yeah, I can't think of anything particular about it, but it's just it's just the sort of thing that I like when everything like you're like the dramatic music and things are silly that's happening, but the characters are taking it seriously. I just like that a lot. So I watched that a couple of times and I was like, "Wait,
Yeah.
this is fun."
Like I said, I haven't seen it myself, but I have not met anyone that has seen Fall Guy that didn't enjoy the show. So,
I mean, I'm here. I invited you onto the show. So
except for Rob.
I'll put it to you this way: it's your list. I'm not going to throw it out, but no, I literally stopped watching Fall Guy after an hour, and I realized there was still an hour
Yeah,
left.
you were
and
the
was
guys
my
that told
reaction.
me not to watch it, right?
Such a
And I was like,
contrarian.
Yeah, you should have listened, Sarah.
"Yeah, I liked it. It's just my thing, you know? And for the people
Mhm.
that is their thing, it just really works. It's kind of, it felt like kind of like a throwback to like just like cheesy.
And to be fair, and I'll be straight with you, I did not go into it looking to hate it because I actually do like Emily Blunt, and Ryan Gosling is pretty hit or miss, but he's been some things that I've actually liked, so I don't completely just down on him. It's just that whoever wrote that film and put it together, I was just like, how do you fail with chemistry with these two actors who are generally known, at least for the movies that they're in separately, for having pretty solid chemistry with other people? It's like, to me, it was a film that got, fair enough.
I thought that they had like a really good concept, but then didn't like see it all the way through. Like that one scene where they have the split screen and they're talking on the phone, and they're like paralleling their relationship with the movie and stuff. That kind of doesn't like go to the end of the movie almost. So they kind of forget that thread. And there's a lot of instances of that where there's a lot of good ideas, but it doesn't see it through to the end of the movie. So, but yeah. Number 2, I have Deadpool and Wolverine. Not really
Fair
much to
enough.
say about it, I don't think, though. I just really enjoyed it. I'm a fan of the way the Deadpool movies are now. I didn't really like the first one, so I really liked the.
I will say this about Deadpool and Wolverine. While it's overall not on my top list, I think that the scene where Hugh Jackman basically is in the car running down Deadpool to the point of complete silence is probably one of the better scenes of the entire year. So, film overall didn't hit home with me, but that one particular scene I really, really enjoyed.
Hugh Jackman was always like, delivers stuff. So I also I really liked the nice pool for some reason. Like,
really?
it was so stupid, but every time he showed up, I was like, oh, this is great. And he looks at the camera and it's like, the proposal. I thought that was so funny. Everyone else hated that.
Which is interesting because, like, just real quick, which is interesting because, like I said, there's some not so savory details regarding Ryan Reynolds right now regarding his wife of the story that's probably going to blow up pretty big later this year. So, like I said, enjoy the Deadpool and Wolverine nostalgia as you can.
All
because
you can.
Yeah, because it might take a very quick turn here in the next couple of months if that story turns out to be as big as it's looking right now.
I just want to say for the record, I called that. I called that the day it came out. I was like, watch this blow up in her face because she thinks, because she has way more power than he does. And it's just like, and watch if she's lying, and it's starting to look like that.
Oh boy.
It's like, why can't people just like, wow, that person sucks, I'm not going to work with them ever?
Because everybody in Hollywood has massive egos and they
story.
need to throw on their weight and money.
And you know what? If she had just let this go, everyone would have gotten over it eventually. If she had just let it go, let it simmer for a couple of months, people would have moved on to the next story and no one would have even thought about all this. But now she made it a thing, and now we have 9-figure lawsuits being thrown around the place. And like I said, it's going to get ugly. So
sounds like it ruined their movie too. I have a friend who wanted to see it, and then she was like, I'm not interested in it anymore because of the controversy. I wasn't really interested in it to begin with, so
it's not even a good movie, but it did do pretty well at the box office. But there's absolutely no shot they're going to do another one for the obvious reasons now. And like I said, now someone's going to get sued out.
You think it's WWE? You think they're just fucking scamming us?
No, I think that she got personally butthurt because she has an ego, and she realized that over the course of the last couple of months, her favorability among the public took a shot over the way that she presented herself, and then she thought that the only way of getting out of that was essentially blame him for the fact that everyone thinks she's a bitch, and that certainly did not help things.
If it was WWE, then it would be doing
But
good
again,
for the movie, but it's not. It's like hurting the movie, right?
Yeah,
you're right there. So it might be some bad marketing. But if they're going to do another one with the same people.
Well, here's the problem. If they're doing a pro wrestling angle, who's the baby face? Because it certainly isn't Blake.
You don't need no baby face anymore, man. They're all heels.
Lame. Go ahead and Sarah and hit us with what was that? That's your number 2, so you're into number 1 now.
I've got
right?
number 1. I've got Dune Part 2 and number 1. It's kind of like almost there just because nothing else can go there. Like, I liked the first one a lot better. I was excited by the first one when it came out, and now this one like 2 years later feels kind of like I paused the movie and then came back to it 2 years later, and by then I had kind of lost my fandom interest and stuff. And but I do think that it was a really good movie. I liked that it had a bit more comic relief than the first one. I thought Javier Bardem's character was really amusing, and I liked Austin Butler's character. He did a good job. I liked the stuff on that planet, the with the infrared filming and all that kind of stuff is that's just like filmmaking fun stuff that happens in it that's interesting. Um, I liked
I
Florence
thought it
Pugh.
was I thought it was better than the first one, which I notoriously hated because it actually felt like things were happening and it was progressing towards something. And all of a sudden, there was a story there. And I was like, okay, now I actually have a reason to care. Things moved a lot smoothly than the first one did. So I have a much better view of that one than I had of the other one. So I mean,
Did
that's certainly.
you did you read the books though?
No, I did not read the books. However, when I watched the second one, I did do a lot more research on the whole Dune lore, which is why I came to the conclusion that it's possibly accidentally a story about the Antichrist, which we'll talk about on a whole other story there. But
Yeah, I was talking with a friend about it the other day, and he was saying that he thought that the first movie only really worked if you'd read the book because it
Mhm.
kind of like skims over things that if you read the book, then you kind of like naturally understand what's going on. But if you don't, then you don't really like feel the progression of the plot. So I feel like there's maybe like something there. And the second movie kind of works better for people who haven't read the book, and maybe worse for people who have read the book since it kind of goes away from the plot. At the end.
For what I figured out, the guy who wrote the books apparently based a lot of the Dune books on the fact that he was raised by two Jesuit Catholic women. I guess like either his aunt or auntie, whatever the case may be, and he hated them for that obvious reason. So it makes sense that when you see like the witch ladies in the Old Covenant in the film, that is basically a representation of the women who raised them, which is why they're so evil and dastardly in the film, because it's like, oh, it's a little bit more personal to him. So like, I understood like certain references like that, and then the whole thing with like the Mahdi, which he took from Islam, and I've done many videos kind of exposing Islam, so it's kind of like, I don't know about this stuff. But yeah, so I did do a little bit more research on this one than I did with the last one, and even with that, I can still say that objectively, visually, there's a lot of to be impressed by with Dune Part 2. I think the story works a lot better. Obviously, if you're more of a fan like Leon here, you might have a few issues with some of the things they did in this movie. The ending, I think they tried to squeeze in a little too much in this time frame, where it's like they almost tried to have a fourth act on top of the third act. It's like whenever you try to do that in a movie, it's never going to work out well. There's a reason why we have standard progressions like that. But yeah, so I'm not going to completely crap all over it. There was a lot of things that I liked, but you know, to me, it was more of a middle of the road film, which is why I put it on my mid list and not my best or my worst this year. So yeah, the
I kinda
pacing was
look-
far better in part 2.
Yeah, I'm just kind of looking at it now as like both movies being the same movie almost, like
Mm.
because they don't really work exactly without each other anyway.
Like I said, it feels to a certain point like, even though it's a movie epic, it just feels better if they did this like in a series. Like this is probably one of those things that would be better if it was like an 11 episode series rather than like 2.5 hour movies that
Then
don't
they
really
would
gel
just add a
together.
bunch of stuff and it would be stupid, like the whatever the HBO spinoff
Mhm.
series is doing.
Oh,
Yeah.
the HBO was
I'm fine with
god
how
awful.
it is.
Prophecyist, Harold, just continued destruction of the lore.
Someone else can make another adaptation in like 10 years anyway, so no big deal.
Yeah,
So,
pretty
yeah.
sure we'll get more of those.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep, that's it for me. That's all my movies.
All right, Rob,
Thanks.
your movies better be good, or else everyone's gonna turn on you horribly here. So,
I don't care. But no, that's fine. That's totally fine.
so we're gonna go with honorable mentions for you. Then you can go ahead and start with your list.
All right. So honorable mentions, I technically have 6 of them.
Mhm.
A couple of them we've talked about already. Terrifier 3. I was jarred by my experience in the theater by the audio more than anything. The audio was so jarring, impactful. Like I was like, I haven't been in a horror movie and felt like this since I was a teenager. So I thought that was great. I mean, the movie itself is like, obviously there's an homage to Silent Night, Deadly Night, and it's the same actress from the previous movies or movie. I'm not quite. Was she in the first one? I don't know.
No,
I
she's
can't
in
remember.
the second one, but not the first.
The second one. Okay. So I enjoy these movies, especially the second one.
Oh wait, you're talking about the heroine, right? The final girl. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yes, second one.
But so yeah, I just enjoyed this one. I thought of it as like a sick comedy. I thought it was for really sick people, but like what's happened, you're not really feeling the kills as much as like they're just gruesome and over the top, and like he has this sick face on, like, hey, can you believe I'm doing this right now? So and there's a bit of like just fun, in a disturbing kind of disgusting way. So that's what I would say. It's definitely for sick people, but it's
You hear that, Iron?
comedy is how I would say it. Yeah. Boy Kills World is number 15.
Yeah, loud and clear.
This was just fun.
Wish I'd
This
seen
was
that.
just like, I had such a good time with this. This is the kind of movie I usually hate. This is the kind of thing that's mimicking Deadpool, that's doing the Marvel, winking at the camera, the tongue-in-cheek comment, the joke every 5 minutes. This found a way to do it successfully. It did it without annoying me. It set up its characters. It set up its world. It has a few twists that personally I didn't see coming because I wasn't looking for them. I was actually engaged by the movie. And guess what? The very end, the sort of reconciliation that he has with his imaginary sister or whatever that he's been carrying with him, heartfelt and actually sweet, and the movie itself has a beating heart, and I was surprised by that. I really was, because there's a great effort that's put to the choreography and the fights and the action, but it never loses that sense of identity of what the stakes are and what the movie's about. So I was surprised how much I liked this one. So it comes in at number 15.
Were you surprised at how much character work went into it? Because I certainly was.
Yeah, and you almost don't even notice it's happening. And that's the greatest thing, is like you're just enjoying the movie. They have that really, it is kind of dumb on a rewatch, the whole like gibberish from the guy, because he can't understand what he's saying, or he can't read lips or whatever. So I mean, that's humorous. The fact that these guys like come back after you think they're gone, and so I mean the movie kind of doesn't stop surprising you and having these kind of fun twists to it. I actually bought the movie. I have it on disc right now, but so I've pretty much recommended that to anybody I've talked to.
And it's technically a foreign film, so you can be cultured when watching it.
I think it came out of South Africa. That one and Kill were movies that I think were released technically last year, but were 2024 releases because we just didn't get access to them. The Beekeeper is coming in at number 14. So if people can have Fall Guy on their list, I'm going to have The Beekeeper as an honorable mention. Look, I'm not going to say that this isn't a stupid movie or that it doesn't pass a certain, but the kills, the action, the choreography is all done really well. That's what I'll say. It's a dumb Jason Statham action movie, but it has a sort of like underlying connection there to like the deep state and corrupt politicians, which we certainly have dealt with the last 8 years. So that was kind of a fun little thing. Like the president's kid is trying to kill him, and Jason Statham's like the good guy, and his I don't think it was his mom. It was like somebody he worked for got hacked or whatever, and so he goes after the people responsible. But I just think this is it's a fun movie. But yeah, you're not going to sweat any mental strain over it. It's
I will say this too,
but it's fun.
Just real quick, this movie was really a good barometer of how bad the first half of the year was versus how good the second half of the year was. Because there was a long period where this was like our number one film, at least for like the first quarter of 2024. And it's not because it was a great movie. It was that the movies that were coming out were so bad early on in the year. Like by default, this was like literally the best thing that we had saw. Now, obviously, other films came out much later that it's only on honorable mention for now. But yeah, this was kind of like, wow, is this really the best we have for all of this year? So it wasn't looking good very early on.
Yeah. Up next is Love Lies Bleeding. So this is the... I don't know. I don't remember her name from
Kirsten Stewart.
Not Kristen Stewart. It's the muscle chick. Because you said she was in like something else and that I hadn't seen, The Mandalorian or something. I think it was.
What is her name? I know exactly who you're talking about.
That's okay.
No, not Gina
Katie
Carano.
O'Brien. It's
Katie O'Brien. Here we go.
So this was just a movie that was all about style. It's a neo-noir. It's stupid people kind of getting involved in things that are way over their heads. But kind of in a fun, I don't know. I think it's a more of a mashup between neo-noir and horror tropes, because you have somebody that's dealing with, taking steroids to bulk up for a muscle competition or weightlifting competition. And
Roid rage.
yeah, and Kristen Stewart is just this random chick who runs a gym, and her father is like the town, criminal, like, crime boss, and they fall in love and they conspire to kill him. And it's just, it's, if you've seen one neo-noir, you've seen them all, but just those kind of familiar genre tropes, but very stylistic. There's a clear detail behind the camera by Rose Glass, who did, oh shit, I'm gonna completely forget what other movie she did, but she's gotten a lot of praise over the last couple of years for the movie she's done. Oh, Saint Maud is what it was. But it's just a solid thriller. But it kind of jumps the shark there at the end with Katie O'Brien becoming
artistic
like
interpretations towards the end probably pulled it away.
Yeah, it just kind of like floats off into its own dream logic and dream world. So I definitely take off points for that, but just a fun kind of thriller movie. And then,
I will say this just for that part. I think that Katie O'Brien makes this film far more enjoyable than Kirsten Stewart does. And I will say this too: the scene where she finally does make it to Vegas and she does her whole bodybuilding routine, and then she like violently throws up all over the. I laughed hysterically during that scene. So that to me is still one of my best moments of 2024.
Yep. All right, almost through my honorable mentions here. So we've got Dune Part 2 coming in at number 12. So this is basically just because I enjoyed Part 2 way more than Part 1. I have not read the book, so I'm complete. So, but Part 2 made Part 1 make sense for me. Now, I take off points because it's part of a movie. It's not a movie. I mean, yeah, it's Part 2 of a movie, but that's the first book, Part 1 and Part 2. That's a 5.5 hour movie, basically. So that's really the thing to judge, I think. But whatever, there was I thought a good like visionary connection to the world building. I thought the characters were more developed this time. I actually liked, Paul's trajectory. When the ending was happening, I was like, holy shit, this is epic. I was literally thinking that in my mind, even if I kind of came down on it, looking at it as a whole. I like Christopher Walken. I like Florence Pugh. I like a lot of the performances. I like Austin Butler. I thought he was pretty vicious. I thought he was good enough to earn an Oscar nomination for best supporting actor. That's how good I thought he was. I even like Zendaya. I even thought that she was actually pretty good in this. But it's just kind of doesn't quite all come together there. And again, it's part of a story, so it's really hard for me to judge. But I did like the effort. I did like the attempt, especially with how much I disliked Part 1. And so that's kind of where I land with Dune Part 2. Last honorable mention is a movie called Daddy-O, which technically, again, came out last year, I think, but it's a 2024 release for me.
It's one of those weird things, and I will say this: if it came out like some weird film festival that only like 6 critics saw, then didn't get a wide release, I still call it a 2024 movie because that's the metric that we're gonna go off of. Then yeah, most of these movies won't even be on our list. So
yeah. So this is actually a pretty underrated movie. It's one location. It's in a car. Sean Penn is driving Dakota Johnson home from the airport. They hit some construction. They get to talking kind of about like her life and what she's into, and basically she's a side chick for some like, well, I don't know if he's a wealthy finance guy, but you get the impression that he has money, he has the resources to kind of to send her stuff. And of course all she gets are these I guess like pleading texts for like sex or to send him pictures of stuff, or like, and it's just like this kind of dehumanizing experience for her. But it actually, the movie has this heart. It very much sees her as a human being. And Sean Penn is really trying to relate this through, an older man's point of view. But the connection they make is unquestionable. The chemistry they have is great. This is the kind of movie they really don't make anymore. These sort of 90-minute, 100-minute conversation based, character driven kind of movies. But this is really good work, I think, by Dakota Johnson. I think she can do a lot more than she's been given up to this point. I liked her in Suspiria a couple years ago. I was holding out hope that Madam Web wasn't terrible because she's in it and whatever, but it was, so that's fine. And I've always kind of liked her for what it's worth. So, but that just missed my top 10. But yeah, Daddy-O was pretty solid. But yeah, coming into my top 10 here is first one. It's Maxine. This is the final movie in the Ty West trilogy of horror movies. Was it X, Pearl, and now Maxine? This is a fun, nasty movie that absolutely pokes Hollywood in the eye and says the only way you make it is if you're a terrible person. So that alone was fantastic. And then you have, was it Kevin Bacon playing the weird stalker guy, private investigator guy, and just like hamming it up, but just, it's a lot of fun. And I think the movie's actually quite strong and interesting, going into like hitting the third act when you get the reveal of the villain of who the person is that's stalking her. The guy that paid Kevin Bacon. That was a bit like too little on the nose, little too cliche, too reminiscent of late 80s sort of satanic panic thing, which is fine. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't mind that it landed in a safe place, but her relationship with Elizabeth Debicki, who is I think the director on the movie that she's been cast on, is really good. But yeah, it's just a lot of movies on my list just have this kind of nasty, mean streak to them, especially when it comes to Hollywood and what that town really is comprised of. So that's why I really liked Maxine. I thought it was probably the best movie out of them in the trilogy. I know people like Pearl. I know right. I know people liked X maybe better, but I thought this one was a lot of fun. And number 9 is Strange Darling. I don't know if anybody saw that here. I really like this one. This is a movie where it's just pretty simple genre trope setup. 2 people are meeting at a motel for sex. It's non-linear, so it's jumping back and forth. And you kind of think you know exactly what's going to happen, and you do not. You absolutely don't. Like, I was absolutely blown away by the twist in this story and the ensuing chase and the ensuing events that come after it. I loved it. I absolutely loved this movie. Watch it for the twist alone. I do not think you'll be disappointed. I don't want to reveal anything more than that, but just with how the movie starts, it does not go the way you think it's going to go.
Can you see this film, Strange Darling, being divisive? Because some of my other movie review, like buff friends, because I didn't see it, but a few of them did, and every time they talk about it, they are staunchly opposed to one another. Is that? Do you think that's going to be a normal response from people?
Well, I'll just say this: with all the Me Too bullshit that's gone on the last half a decade or however long it's been, this was just such a breath of fresh air. This was just like, it's like, keep thinking that this can't happen. Keep thinking that this would never happen or is out of the realm of possibility. And I don't know, the way that it plays with these tropes, the way that it plays with these traditional ideas of women being helpless, it's really good. It's really good. So to me, I want to be provoked. I want my buttons pushed when I'm watching a movie. The fact is, it just doesn't happen that often. So when it does, I just feel the need to point it out,
I will say this too. That was a similar complaint to a movie. It was a movie with Emma Watson and like Tom Hanks about it was basically them being like the Apple clone. I don't remember the exact name of the movie, but people trash The Circle. That's the name. Yeah, The Circle. People trash that film because they thought in 2017, oh, this is unrealistic. This will never happen in real life. Keep in mind, this is like pre-COVID, by the way. So they literally were living in a complete fantasy land. And the whole idea is that, oh, this is so ridiculous. This was never happened in real life. It's like, have you not paid attention to our nation in the last 10, 15 years? This is absolutely something that can and will happen in real life. So that's all my commentary there.
Coming in at number 8 is Longlegs. This is another movie that just absolutely blew me away when I saw it. I'd heard about Nicolas Cage's performance. He is unrecognizable. I think that this is going to be a performance that he will be remembered for years. I know he's not going to get any Academy Award nomination attention, unfortunately, but he's great. He is great, and he's reminiscent. I know it's not, the character isn't like trans or whatever, but it's very reminiscent of like some fucking creepy weirdo, like just, you know, in the Pacific Northwest, which is where it takes place. And the lighting is great, the cinematography is great, the actual the lighting, even when it's daytime outside, it looks like that. It absolutely looks like that for long stretches of time from like October to April out in the Pacific Northwest. So I loved all those little details. I loved how creepy and terrifying the antagonist was. It's good to see Micah Monroe still doing well. She's the lead in this. It was great to see Alicia Witt, the D girl from The Sopranos, all these years later as Micah Monroe's mom. So this, I saw it, I think 4th of July weekend, because I had waited, because I, you know, all I heard was praise about this movie. I was like, yeah, it's gonna fucking suck like every other horror movie that gets praised. And no, it was really good. It was really good. And I do think there are some logical issues, but it doesn't really matter to me, because we're dealing with the psyche and the mind of someone who is, you know, is an FBI agent and is investigating this, but is also directly impacted because of the events that obviously lead up to the very end. So this is a very good movie. The fact that it's a horror movie, it just seems like it's beside the point. I was really impressed with this one. And I think it's obviously this is like well known, but it's the son of Anthony Perkins, Osgood Perkins, who directed this one. So
you brought up Nicolas Cage's performance. I did not know it was him until the credits rolled. I knew it was his production company. I thought he just produced it. So when the credits rolled, and it said he was like, you know, the main. He was long.
Long legs,
really
yeah.
Spoiler. Like I was trying to figure out whether like you said, the movie's been out since I think May or June, either way. And I was like, I was blown away. I did not know it was him the entire film.
Yeah, I just thought it was such an impressive performance. And I mean, here's the thing, Nicolas Cage has annoyed me for long periods of time, like because of his career and how he had to kind of throw himself into the projects to kind of get out of debt to the IRS and whatever. But the last decade or so, he's done these kind of weird performances, whether it's like Mandy or whether it's like Pig, or whether it's, you know, the one where he plays himself with Pedro Pascal.
That one I didn't see.
Yeah,
there's a Five Nights at Freddy's movie that wasn't really Five Nights at Freddy's. I don't even remember what it was called. It was just dumb fun.
Right.
Like,
like Wally's Wonderland or something like that.
yeah,
The crippling weight of like
Wonderland.
True Talent
Massive
or something
Talent.
like that.
Yeah.
with-
Talent.
Yeah, so I hate almost all I do hate all those movies, but I really enjoyed this one. I really enjoyed his performance, just playing an absolute creep. And so definitely check it out if you've not seen it. I know film Twitter kind of went crazy over it, which usually drives me away. So I definitely understand. Coming in at number 6, you know, this is okay. Personally, this is one of my favorite movies. I just can't put it in my top 5 because there's better movies on my list. This, I saw the trailer a week before it came out, and I was like, I have to see this movie. So The Substance is a movie that it almost like drives as many people away as it attracts. It's a movie that's nasty and mean and cold and unfeeling and mocks the pain of women and just, it's, you know, it's a movie that says, hey, I feel your pain, but hey, stop being so fucking stupid about beauty and beauty standards and stop buying into the lie. If it's such a lie, stop it. So, and maybe
To me,
on capitalism and whatever, but it's telling the way, stop making bad choices that are not good for you.
real quick, and I'll let you continue here, but the prevailing narrative about this film, and this is why it's getting a little bit of award recognition, is that they think that this is somehow a social commentary on Hollywood beauty standards and like the patriarchy and stuff. This is what you guys are making women do. The list of like, no, this is what you guys are willing to do because you are so obsessed with fame and attention that you will literally do horrific acts beyond human comprehension just to get ahead. And that's exactly what Hollywood is. This is the system that you guys created. This is why so many women willingly went along with Harvey Weinstein and all the other scumbags in Hollywood for so many years, because it got them ahead. It got them at the top top of the ladder, at the top of the food chain, didn't care what part of their soul they had to sell in order to get there. Like, this is essentially what it is to a T. It's like, that's the message of the movie, is that you guys are so obsessed with being on top that you'll do any deprived thing your mind can come up with, even if it means literally horrors behind human comprehension.
Yeah, and you know, it's
Yeah.
to me it's funny though. Like, it has a sense of humor to it too, and that's why ultimately it's a satire, because it is ultimately critical of these beauty standards of trying to basically do whatever you can to stay on top, even if it's immoral and unethical. But hey, it doesn't matter because you're in the spotlight and you're glamorous and you're beautiful and people enjoy looking at you and you're getting that attention. And you can't get something for nothing, you know, and at some way there's a cost to that, to that value that you're extracting.
Yeah.
The movie falls apart at the end of the third act, but
Yeah.
it falls apart in a way that's kind of giving a middle finger to Hollywood and to all these beauty standards and to buying into the lie. Because it's true what Jacob said. Like, Demi Moore, she's given the one person is given this out where it's like, look, this guy from your high school like adores you and loves you and wants to go on a date with you, and you know you can have, but it's like she can't feel good about herself. That's the whole thing. The whole thing is she doesn't because she doesn't.
She
look
didn't
a
care
certain
about.
way, she doesn't believe enough in who she actually is to even buy into that as a possibility.
She didn't care about his validation. She wanted validation from the industry, right? Which is why that midpoint point, it's like, hey, look, I can go out there, have a good time with this guy, kind of move on with my life and have somebody in my life who actually loves me and adores me for who I am, rather than the younger representation of me that everyone loves. But she didn't want that, so she rejected it, and then it led her down to a bigger rabbit hole. And I will say that the ending of this film, the reason why it hurt it from probably being a top 10 movie for me, I think they wanted to go with more of a traditional horror type of ending, and it's like, dude, the story enough, if you really put it in its proper context, is horrific enough. You really don't need the over-the-top gore and blood that goes along with it. I mean, it's telling one of the best psychological horror movies in the entire year just in and of itself. Like, you really didn't need that ending to top it off.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that among other things, I think is why it's transgressive horror. I mean, it's going so far, it's going so in your face, so loud. It's very punk rock, really, is what it is.
Yeah.
But it's messy. It's not clean. It's not tidied up. And so, you know, you either appreciate that or it's just a little bit too much. And honestly, like, that's why I was laughing for 75% of this movie. I just kept thinking about how people would react when they saw this.
Yeah.
And for awards consideration, look, I would love, I've loved Margaret Qualley for about a decade, so I would love for her to do well and get a Best Supporting Actress nomination, much less a win. But I think more than likely it's Demi Moore. But yeah, you know, I am so at odds when it comes to like what I think should win or who I think should win versus what actually does, except for last year where that was the first year in a very long time, maybe the first time in my life where the movie I thought was best also won Best Picture and, you know, all the awards. So
it was going to be a very, very difficult sell for them to try to convince anyone that Oppenheimer wasn't the best movie of the year. So, yeah.
So this one is a movie I almost guarantee nobody has seen. In fact, I don't think I've talked to anybody who's seen it. It is a Western called The Dead Don't Hurt. And this came out in May. Viggo Mortensen stars and directs it. Vicky Krieps, who was probably best known for The Phantom Thread. Excellent actress, phenomenal. She is incredible in this. You know, she's not going to get any awards consideration because this movie wasn't seen by anybody, but this is a great movie. This is, it's quiet, it's quaint, it's shot in that kind of traditional Western point of view. It gets the, you know, the rock faces and the landscape of the Southwest right. You could tell it was shot at least in a location that it looks like a Western. It took the time to kind of get those visual things right. But pretty simple story. Two people meet. He goes off to fight in the Civil War because he feels like it's his duty as an American. You know, she is left by herself. She is assaulted. She has to kind of like fend for herself out on the not on the frontier, but in a place that doesn't necessarily have bountiful resources. So it to me, it's kind of like a hard one story about America, and that you know, we all have sort of progressed forward, not with the greatest stories, not with kind of the most easy to swallow narratives, but we survive and we make it, and that's part of who we are, and that's part of our story. So this is not going to be a movie that blows away modern audiences, but for people that love westerns, people that like well crafted, small, personal human stories, I think will appreciate it. You see, I'm trying to think of his name now. Danny Houston, who's also in Horizon. He shows up here again as the corrupt sheriff in town. So if you like westerns, I definitely recommend it. But yeah, it's I think an hour and 30 minutes, hour and 40 minutes. It's not too long. But good character work by Viggo Mortensen and Vicky Krieps, and just a really well-made movie. So top 5. I'm sorry. Oh, I just wanted to make sure anybody had a thing to say.
Oh, no, you're good.
Okay, so top 5, we've got A Complete Unknown. So this is the Bob Dylan biopic. I pretty much came into this blind. I am actually I won't say I'm a big Bob Dylan fan.
Going to the Stevie Wonder biopic blind, not the Bob Dylan one.
Yeah, well, I just went into it blind, not knowing much about it. But yeah, I do like Bob Dylan. I'm not a huge fan, but there's 5 or 6 songs that have kind of stayed with me, younger life, relationships, whatever, that just kind of mean a lot to me. So I really liked this one. I liked his character. I liked the fact that he kind of wanted to be left alone, that he didn't, everybody was kind of trying to always have him around, and be at parties or be at whatever. And like, he would go, but at a certain point, he started to feel the pull of people like Pete Seeger, people like Woody Guthrie, who, kind of wanted him to be the activist, and sing Mr. Tambourine Man at the rallies. And he at a certain point just wanted to be an artist. He just wanted to create, and he was a natural contrarian, which of course is, another reason I probably love him as an artist and as a figure, especially in this movie. But Timothée Chalamet sounds like Bob Dylan, sings like Bob Dylan. He really becomes that character. And this is from James Mangold, who made Walk the Line. And the fact that we've got Johnny Cash cameos played by Boyd Holbrook, who shows up in another movie here in my list. But it's just funny every time seeing him show up with the guitar pointing out to him and telling Bob Dylan to like wipe some mud on the carpet. Basically, like, everybody's expecting you to be this clean, safe thing. Don't be a rock and roller, be a punk rocker. I mean, he very much embodied punk rock before it was a musical genre, before it was a movement. And so I just love that. I love the portrayal of him and his struggle to kind of treat people well while being a dedicated and obsessive artist. He has a relationship with Joan Baez throughout, and he basically calls her songs paintings in the dentist's office. They're very nice, and she sings nice. But it's almost intimating that there's a lack of rawness to them. And of course, Bob Dylan's been made fun of his entire life for how he sounds, the way he sings. And of course, that's what makes him great, is that he is a great poet, a great songwriter, irrelevant of the fact that he's not a very good singer. So that's interesting. So I personally think Timothée Chalamet is the front runner for Best Actor for this. But yeah, it's a biopic. Like, it's not gonna blow you away, but I thought it was a well-made, kind of smoothly edited, keeps things going, keeps the runtime down, enjoyable, fun movie in a year that there just isn't much to celebrate. So but I did really enjoy going to see it. So that is number 5. Number 4 is Sean Baker's Anora, which is a movie that's not on anybody's list. So, and I don't know if it was more that people didn't see it or just had a hard time relating to a stripper / prostitute, but And look, I had my doubts about Mikey Madison, who is the girl that gets set on fire in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That's really what she's best known for. But
He was
I don't
also
know,
a killer in that terrible Scream movie.
the
that
Scream
came out a
movie where
couple
she
years
also
ago.
gets set on fire. I was told.
Yeah.
So I
It's
thought
a
that was
trend.
actually pretty funny. So there's not much to say here other than like she's a stripper who works in New York City, and one day the son of an oligarch comes in and basically offers to pay for her for a week, and it's like watching two young idiots go off on a little journey that exactly how it's going to end. And I suppose it's reminiscent, and I'm sorry that I have to say this. It's reminiscent of my younger life, when I was a little bit more.
I'd say you weren't a stripper in New York City, were you?
No, but I would make dumb decisions about people I would fall for. I would, just be romantically foolish. And both of these people are foolish. Both of them, maybe they're not romantics, but they're just kind of falling into each other. They're codependent idiots who don't really know what they're doing. And that's kind of how, looking back, at least on my life, that's kind of how it feels, or it felt. And you're just like, you're so stupid. Please stop what you're doing. Just stop. You're gonna ruin you're just gonna ruin yourself for future relationships. So it's humorous in that way. And it's very idiosyncratic. It's very well edited. It's very interesting where Baker takes the camera. But you ultimately know where it's going. And I think the achievement of the movie is that it's fun, it's exciting, it's funny in the beginning. And then there's the turn in the middle that's kind of chaotic and a bit of a slapstick screwball comedy. And then it becomes a very real tragedy. But the achievement is that it makes you feel for somebody that is a prostitute, is a stripper, is somebody that isn't very world weary, despite the fact that she works in a profession that requires you to be, if you're gonna last, I suppose. But that's ultimate. And Sean Baker, he's had multiple movies now that deals with porn stars, sex workers, whatever. And I think there's an empathy there, just because it is an industry that chews you up and spits you out, doesn't really care about you. It's not looking out for you. So I think that's really the achievement of something like Anora, is that it's fun, it's sexy, it's exciting, but that it's ultimately heartbreaking, because it's like this is what happens to the people that live those lives. And in that way, it's kind of like a 70s movie like Shampoo, where it's a sex comedy, but it ends on this kind of sobering place where it's like, it's not, you don't want to live like that. You don't want to be that person. So that was number 4. Number 3 is a movie that I'm sure will end up on people's, maybe not their worst of the year list, but I know a lot of people did not like this movie. I still struggle to talk to people about it because I just don't think they understand the way I do. It's Alex Garland's Civil War. So this is a movie that for me was very clearly about the reporters, the war photographers at the center of the story. It's very character driven. It's a road movie. The plot is very loose, almost non-existent. They're heading towards a destination. That's pretty much it. The scenario, the circumstance they find themselves in is very loosely articulated. You're kind of just going in dark. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the sort of Twilight Zone setup. You kind of accept things as they're presented, because at the end of the day, it's not about this large scale look at this conflict. It's just not. It's told from the perspective of journalists. And it didn't do the obvious thing of elevating journalists as brave heroes or whatever. I mean, it showed them acting recklessly. It showed them putting themselves in places they shouldn't be. It was like, what the fuck are you doing? You're in a fucking war zone, you fucking idiots. Kind of thing, like the soldiers they run into or whatever. And it's like, you do get that perspective. You get like the perspective of them going into Washington was some of the most impressive CGI I've seen all year. The helicopters flying into Washington, the war zone, the tanks and the guns and I was blown away, especially my viewing in IMAX. How loud some of those gunshots was jarring. So I really liked it. I thought they avoided the thing of making Nick Offerman like Trump. I thought that they colored between the lines in a really good way. And then to hear everybody talk about it was just like, of course they did, So, and that's fine. Look, I think that you can make the argument that, that they presented something and then they never talked about it, which it's fine. The movie, I think, is directed in a certain way that it's like, it's about those characters. And I will say there's a few cringeworthy lines. I think Wagner Moura is a huge weak spot on the cast. Not to mention that, like, I've seen it enough times where it's like there's moments where he like grabs Kaylee Spaney's ass and it's like, okay, is this guy a pervert? Because like they were talking about like they were up for having drinks the night before and that's how she got to come with in the first place. And I'm like if I heard that, I'd be like, what's going on?
It definitely seemed like it was teasing like something was gonna happen there, and it just never did, which is just like, then why even teasing to begin with? Like,
I thought that the scene with Jesse, it's not Jesse Eisenberg, we were just talking about him, Jesse Plemons with the freaking the
which
mass
American
grave.
are you?
Yeah, the mass grave scene was pretty intimidating. But yeah, I just thought all in all it was a really well made movie. But yeah, I definitely understand some of the issues, like especially when they're doing the expositional dialogue where it was like the Antifa massacre. I was like, that made me cringe really bad. So there's stuff in there like that where it's like, yes, this man is a British citizen. He's not an American. He did the best he could with some of that stuff, but I still gave it a 4 out of 5. It's a top 3 movie for me for 2024. All right. Number 2 is The Bike Riders. So I'm happy that this made people's list, or at least honorable mentions, because I actually think it's a movie that gets richer and deeper the more times you've seen it. I've seen it 3 times. And I mean, to me, yes, it is Goodfellas on Harleys. That's a fair. It really is. The plot goes in a very similar way. It's told through voiceover and these flashbacks through the narrator. I think Jodie Comer did a great job capturing the Chicago accent. I think that she should be up for Best Actress, but I just don't think The Bike Riders made enough noise for that to be the case. The thing people don't talk about a lot is the amount of money it takes to run an Oscar campaign. And usually you get that from the movie being successful, because studios don't want to spend more money than they have to. I mean, certainly they have stuff set aside for these awards campaigns, but yeah, that's why I throw out box office as being a bigger draw than you'd think at the Oscars, because they need the money to be able to push for it. But I think the principal actors are fantastic here. Tom Hardy, who's basically playing Marlon Brando. You have James Dean. Yep. Austin Butler basically playing James Dean. If you've seen The Wild Ones, the biker movie with Brando in it, it's he's even watching. Tom Hardy's character is even watching it on TV. So yes, there's definitely some of those cinematic connections that are unquestionable. The ride they take in the middle of the field out in the outside the town is right out of The Godfather. It's very apropos of Vietnam, where you kind of see the club deteriorate over time, and that's really the crux of the movie. The crux of the movie is you built something that you love more than anything, and society around you is constantly changing, and the rules are constantly changing, and the type of people who want to apply want to change the club that you've built, and the thing that you love is not going to be what it was anymore. It's going to slowly change over time, and that's where it's heartbreaking. That's where you sort of like you get the emotional crux of the story, where it's like, this is who we are, and this is what we remember fondly, and this is how we thought of ourselves, and all of that's gone. And that's very, very apropos and very reminiscent of like the 1970s and what that decade represented, even though this is prior to that, because it's to show the decline. But yeah, I think The Bike Riders is actually an underrated movie. I think it's really good, but it's an understated and subtle thing, because real men don't emote that much. So, men of this generation.
Real quick before let you finish our list. Fortunately, Leon has to drop out here. He has something come up, but I want to go ahead and give a quick little goodbye so you don't just run out like a complete dick. Like,
yeah. I don't want to just run off like a dick. Yeah, I'm sorry. I did have something come up. If you notice, I've been off camera for a hot minute. But that being said, this was a blast. Thank you so much. Iron Oxide, dope ass taste. Sarah, it was lovely to meet you. And Rob, dude, I
Good meeting you.
vehemently disagree with you and agree with you like on so many things. It is wild. You were the most polarizing in the best way because it makes for the like great movie and film conversations, which I feel like we need to have awesome. So this was a great time. Again, thank you for having me. I will be back next week for the worst of the worst. And yeah, again, thank you so much, guys. You have a great rest of your day and enjoy the rest of the stream.
Thanks for joining us, Leon. We'll definitely have you back next week.
Deuces.
See you.
Was that parrot real?
I think so.
That was a real parrot. Okay. Go ahead, Rob.
So Rob,
Last. Oh yeah, go ahead.
for the bike riders, would you say that like you liked or that was like good because of like how kind of like depressing it was? Not, I don't know if depressing is the right word.
I mean,
but,
I can
like,
still hear that song that's playing, like "I'll Never Learn," when they're standing outside for the funeral of their brother or whatever that just ate shit from the car backing up into him. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, like yes, there's the whole thing is about like a brotherhood and a camaraderie, and like it can't last forever. It can't, and that's the beauty and the sadness and the tragedy of it. It's just like we built this thing, and over time it gets ruined, and it gets people who don't believe in the same things you do come in, and it just slowly deteriorates over time. And you saw Austin Butler, it's like he didn't want it. He wanted to be free. He wanted to be, and I don't know, that is like one of the most attractive character traits. I know it's a cowboy thing too, where it's just like, no, it's like I'm independent. I'm free of people. Leave me alone. And that's who I am. That's my destiny. That's my whatever. And of course, you know, he comes back to Jodie Comer, so it's bullshit. But the whole point is that, yeah, no, it's, to me, stuff like that being captured is not easy, but it's incredibly worthwhile.
Yeah.
So
I definitely got that out of it.
Yeah.
But then I always am looking for like a little bit of hope in movies that I watch, and I
Sure.
was having a hard time like grasping on like the hope or any kind of like good meaning that comes out of that, because it's kind of just like they had this good thing and then it got killed, you know, and it was kind of like empty
I will
at the
say
end.
this: it is tough from this perspective because it's a movie that's based on a real 1% biker outlaw group. So it's like it's from a historical sense, which means that if you know what the group is doing today, then you know that this story, which is not going to end well from the very beginning going into that. I don't know how many people thought that or knew that going in there, but it's one of those films where it's like I get what you're saying, but you're just not going to get that with a story in this nature.
Yeah, maybe that's when I would be like, put something in there that, I mean, there's got the like that Austin Butler's ending and Jodie Comer and him ending up together definitely has like, it should feel good, but it kind of almost didn't for me. Or maybe I just need to watch it again from that perspective. Rob, did you find like any kind of like silver lining at the end? Or did you just like enjoy it for like the realistic like darkness that it had?
I mean, Austin Butler him accepting, because that's the whole thing, is like it's really about like accepting love, you know, and being secure enough to come back to the woman that loves you and wants the best for you. And that to me is a silver lining, you know what I mean? And because it's like I'm an individual anyway, and so I always look at groups or collectives as kind of, not I don't want to say the enemy, but it's like, well, groups and collectives get corrupted. So, you're with the woman that loves you, and that's ultimately what's best for you. You're still working on bikes, you still have your foot that you almost lost at the beginning of the movie. So
I have a little smile at the end.
yeah.
Okay, cool.
So my number one movie of the year is Clint Eastwood's Juror Number 2. So this is a movie I did not see until a couple weeks ago, and I really knew nothing about it going in. I think it's shameful what Warner Brothers did after a 60-year relationship with the guy to just kind of dump his movie in limited theaters, but that's beside the point. This is a old school crime drama courtroom thriller. This is a throwback to the 1950s, to Robert Wise, to Billy Wilder, prosecution or Witness for the Prosecution, Anatomy of a Murder, I Want to Live. I mean, this is cinematic craftsmanship at its finest, and frankly at its at a little bit of a basic level, but it is so effective. And I honestly was surprised how good this was, and that he would go through such a traditional route. This is basically, I don't want to ruin it, I don't want to spoil it, but it is the premise, so I'm just going to go there. The one of the jurors for a murder trial in this town, and I think it's in Georgia, is basically the perpetrator of the crime. And he's basically, it's this moral character. Well, it's a morality tale for this character, who's basically going through all of these, being haunted by committing the crime, and watching this guy stand trial for the thing he did. And it's just so captivating. It's so interesting. It talks about like really it talks about like the very moral issues that lie at the center of our criminal justice system, and it's somebody with a conscience, but a man that knows he's guilty, that knows he committed the crime for which he's judging another man on. And so I just found the setup and the execution of it to be so thrilling. And you can see the weight, you can see the sort of doubt all over Nicholas Holt's face, for almost the entire movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think that just pound for pound, he gives one of the best performances of the year. And I think there's definitely some weaknesses with it, the movie overall. I mean, I think the pacing has some issues. I think some of the actors cast are not necessarily the best quality. But I think that for being kind of this straightforward genre film that's elevated really by Clint Eastwood being behind the camera, I think that this is one of the best movies of the year. It's my my favorite movie of the year. So really just captivated by it when I saw it a couple weeks ago. I was surprised it wasn't talked about more, but it's been that kind of year, you know what I mean? And the fact that it wasn't released very well, the fact that it didn't get out to enough eyes, I think is more telling. But I whatever. I'm holding out hope that it does well during award season, but I don't think that that's going to be the case. So, but yeah, this was definitely like an old school courtroom drama that was very well done, and really surprised me up until the end. And it's like, the other shoe's going to drop as the character. It's like, it's coming, and there's really nothing you can do to stop it. And it's like you just had a baby, you just got married, you're just starting your life, but those consequences for the things that you've done will never go away. Though, I mean, even if the knock at the door never happens, you're going to be you're just, every time a police siren comes on, every time, you think it's the other shoe dropping, and that in and of itself is punishment in its own right.
Yep. And that's your top 10 list.
Yep, that's it.
All right, then. Well, I guess it's time to get to the main event of this show, which is my top 10 and my honorable mentions of the year. So, if you guys haven't caught on up to this point, you know that the films that I really like and I really enjoy are films that make you think. I love character stories. I love character-based driven stories. I like character studies. So, the films that I tend to gravitate to are always excelling in those. Obviously, I have a couple of foreign films that are on my list here too, so I know you guys haven't seen these, but I will explain them the best way that I can, and I will recommend them to you if you guys haven't seen them. If you're looking for films that you may have missed this year, those will be a few of them that are on there. So let's go ahead and get the honorable mentions out of the way. First honorable mention is Boy Kills World. It literally just fell out of my top 10 over the last, not even 24 hours, but close to 24 hours now. We'll talk about that here towards the end of my list. Really, really fun film. I like the style of this film, particularly. It's basically a boy who, due to his violent past, his violent upbringing, he doesn't actually speak in the film. All the voices is basically a video game voiceover. So it's like, in his world, everything is basically Super Nintendo. And that's the way that he thought. It's like, everything is Street Fighter and Tekken, and that's like literally it in his mind. But to separate itself from like all the other like uber violent John Wick clones that are out there, the film has great style, has great substance to it, and I really did enjoy it. I thought it was a fun movie, and that's why it's on my honorable mentions list for 2024. Second honorable mention film is a little film that some of you guys may have missed called Sweet Dreams, starring Johnny Knoxville. I know you're thinking Johnny Knoxville is on a film that I actually thought was good. How did that happen? The film is basically about a guy who wakes up on a park bench, has a severe alcohol problem. He realizes that this is the point that he needs to go into rehab and get himself straightened out. A video goes viral basically showing his previous night, ends up threatening the relationship with his wife, his daughter. He realizes if he loses his kid, there's nothing left to live for. So it's like, this is rock bottom. I need to get it together. He goes into a halfway house with a bunch of comedians that are in the house, like Bobby Lee's in the movie. What's his name? Theo Vaughn is also in the film too, just playing like people dealing with their own issues in life. And it really just gets down to a point where it's like, hey, look, they're threatening to throw away the house. They need to find money real quick. It's like, okay, let's just get together and play a softball tournament and win the money. And then they realize they horribly suck at softball. It's not the best route for them to go. But at the other point, it's like everyone else also stinks too. So they kind of have a shot. And I think it's a really, really entertaining movie. Johnny Knoxville does not get brutalized in this film at all, so don't expect him to go jump off of, like cliffs or anything like that. It doesn't happen here in this movie. I think it's a very, very heartwarming film. The movie is basically about the writer and director's life, so there's a lot of care taken into it. I think the banter between the other characters are very, very good, and it's a genuine movie of, look, it's just a bunch of guys who realize they all have problems and they're trying to figure out the best way of moving forward. It's not one of those Hallmark type of movies where everyone gets clean and everyone lives happily ever after. It's like some of the characters do find a way to live their lives while controlling their addictions, and sometimes it doesn't work out for them. It's kind of a real life interpretation of the everyday struggle of addiction. So I really, really enjoyed this movie. It's called Sweet Dreams. Definitely check that one out if you haven't saw it as well. Another movie on my honorable mention list is a film called Sing Sing, which came out earlier this year. This was a movie that I saw on one of those mystery movie Mondays, and I was like, I almost walked out on it. So that was kind of me being like, oh, I don't need to sit here, see through this. It's actually a really, really good film. Can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. I know it's like Carmelo, the black guy here. I can't remember. It starts with a C, but I can't remember exactly his name. Very, very good actor. It's a story about a bunch of guys who are looking to get out on early parole, and I guess their way of showing you that they're on good behavior is that, hey, let's do a stage play with a bunch of other felons to see that, hey, we're moving in the right path. Some guys are up for parole, some guys get denied. So it's very much a story of guys struggling with the reality that, hey, look, we made some mistakes, we did some very, very bad things, and now we're dealing with the consequences of our own actions, right? So it really is a story about, rehabilitation in the not in the police industry, but in the prison industry, and really trying to help the guys get rehabilitated so they can go back home rather than, dealing with, the violent psychopaths who probably should stay there and not be released in the first place. So very, very strong movie. This is probably the most Oscar baity movie on my entire list if you guys are into that one. So yeah, Sing Sing will be there. Another movie is a Chinese film called Remember Me. Very good film that I saw. It is going to hit you guys emotionally. It's basically about a grandmother who was dealing with the fact that her granddaughter was kidnapped years ago. About 18 years later, they find her again, and now she's kind of like getting used to, or trying to live her life again with her granddaughter. She realizes that there's something that's not quite right here with the situation here, because the granddaughter is very, very distant from her. And you think after 18 years, of course, that would be the case. And then you start realizing there's some other things going on here. Very, very emotional movie, very, very heart-wrenching movie. Probably one of the strongest dramas of the year. So I definitely would recommend Remember Me if you haven't seen it this year as well. So that's a film that I'll throw up there. And another honorable mention is a little film called Unsung Hero, which is a film that came out this year. And to me, the reason why I put this movie on my list is that it's a Christian movie based on, I believe, the life story of Rebecca St. James and kind of her family, and about how they moved from Australia, went to Tennessee thinking they were getting this big opportunity. That opportunity fell through almost immediately. So they're in a small house in a country that they don't know much about, all by themselves, and they're trying to basically struggle to survive, right? It is the story about how, guess what, in Nashville, things aren't much different than they are in Los Angeles, just the way that things go here. But everyone keeps their faith in God. Everyone keeps their faith in each other. They ended up getting a few big breaks, and it all moves forward for them. And to me, this is kind of one of the biggest cinematic white pills that I've had in the entire year, where you go there and you watch a film, is what Sarah was saying earlier. You watch a film, and then when the film's over, it's like, oh, I got like a really nice, warm, like good feeling that was probably the best positive ending that I could possibly get out of the film. And we watch so many crappy movies and so many nihilistic movies. To experience that in a film like this is almost kind of like, oh yeah, movies like this actually do still exist. So Unsung Hero, if you really want something that's uplifting and positive, go out there and check out that movie. That's my honorable mention. So now we'll get into my top 10 list here. I'm going to go and start off with a film that some of you guys may have heard of. I know Paulie has probably seen this movie if he's still listening to us here. A film called Your Monster, starring Marissa Barberera. And it's very, very interesting with Melissa, because when she's in mainstream movies like Scream movies, I absolutely despise her. She's not very good in those movies at all. Yet she did a film a couple of years ago called All the World is Sleeping, which I thought was a very, very strong movie. And then she's doing this film here, which is a very low budget film, but it's a story of a girl who she gets diagnosed with cancer, and then her boyfriend breaks up with her. So she's just emotionally a mess. Like, she needs to get it together, but she absolutely can't. And then she realizes there's a monster living upstairs in her attic, and the monster wants her to leave because it's his house and he doesn't want a roommate, right? So they basically try to find ways to live with one another. She's so desperate and pathetic. He's like, what can I possibly do to make your life better so I can get you out of my house? And it's kind of one of those movies. And then as the movie progresses here, you realize is that this woman is basically fighting for her mentality in every way, shape, or form imaginable, and you realize her mental state is far worse off than what you're seeing in the movie, which says a lot, because like I said, she's dripping, depressing, and pathetic throughout the entire film, but it's also entertaining as well. I like the chemistry here with the two leads here. Won't spoil the ending for you. I want you guys to check this one out, but this was almost on the higher end of my list, but then when I gave it more thought, I was like, I probably rated it a little too high, but it's certainly one of my top 10 movies of the year. Your Monster with Melissa Barberera, absolutely a movie that I would recommend you guys watch. Another movie that you guys may not have heard of, but another one that is a very, very strong movie is a movie called Late Bloomers. This is my number 9 movie of the year. This is a film starring Karen Gillan, who you guys know from the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise. She's another woman who's 30 years old. She should be much more emotionally mature than she is. She's not. She just broke up with her boyfriend, and she tried to get back with him and then fell out of the window and broke her hip. So as a result of that, she's in a rehab center with a bunch of women who are like twice her age, and she befriends a very, very mean and unfriendly Polish woman who treats her nasty throughout the course of the film. But then as she starts to get to know her, because she realizes that there really isn't no one else to take care of her, she starts realizing her backstory, realize that, hey, she had a great life in Poland, and the reason why she's so nasty is that she never really got used to living in the United States, and it reminds her of her relationship with her mom. And then you realize the reason why her life is kind of falling apart is that her mother got diagnosed with dementia, and as a result of that has become nonverbal, and she realizes that her entire adult life she's been escaping essentially the fate of her mother and what's happened to her. She's gone distant from her family, her friends, and through her being with this woman and kind of befriending her, it makes her realize that she needs to get back in touch with the people that she has in her life while she still has the opportunity. It's a very, very heartwarming movie. It's a movie that otherwise wouldn't work, because it's like, who can sympathize with a millennial woman at this great age? But it's like, no, it actually does very, very well. And the way that they present her character is very, very well written. And I think Karen Gillan has done far better in smaller movies than she has in the big movies, where she's actually can be more of herself and not have the big pressures of being in a Hollywood production. This film I thought is a hit here for me. This is going to be on my number 9 movie. I see Spencer just joined us here. Coleman Domingo was the guy's name that was mentioned earlier, but I forgot to bring it up there. So yeah, Melissa Barberera, mean old Polish woman, is repetitive. Exactly, but still. So yeah, this is my number 9 film. Very, very good film. Check it out if you haven't already. Number 8 film is Ordinary Angels. This is a movie that came out earlier this year with Alan Ritchson and Hilary Swank. This is basically a film where a guy who just lost his wife is dealing with 2 sick girls. One of them has a liver issue, may only have a year to live. So he's a blue collar guy working on trying to, keep his family alive, but there's only so much that he can do with his job. So Hilary Swank's character decides to help him. She becomes very, very pushy in a lot of aspects here, but it really goes to show you how far a community will go to help someone who's in need, who really, really needs help. One sec. This is a story of a family, I believe it's Colorado, if I'm not mistaken, where the entire town came out to help this girl. She needed a liver transplant. There's only one place in another state that can do it, but because of weather conditions, they could not fly her out. And if they didn't make it there in time, there was no way that she was going to survive. The entire town comes out to help this family get her to where she needs to be. A pilot literally comes off of, I think it was a retired pilot too. It's like, hey, look, I know how to fly helicopters. Give me a plane. I can get her out there. Everyone comes together. This is another very, very heartwarming white pill movie. If you haven't seen it, definitely recommend this film if you're looking for some positivity here. Ordinary Angels, that's my number 8 film on the list. Number 7 on the list here is a film called September 5. I talked about this a little bit on previous streams here, but this is a retelling of the 1972 Summer Olympics tragedy where Palestinian terrorists kidnapped a bunch of, basically kidnapped the Israeli team of the Summer Olympics, held them hostage. This film kind of retells that event and really retells it to a sense that, look, it was incompetence from every sector you could think of. The government was not prepared for a hostage situation of this level. The German government did not even have a SWAT team available. They had to have regular cops try to do SWAT techniques. It did not work out at all. And it really goes to show you the incompetence of the news media. I know the film tries to frame the news media as the heroes of this story. However, the reality is they were so inadamant with being the first ones to announce the fate of the hostages. They incorrectly reported that all the hostages had survived, making everyone think that this was the positive ending, and then hours later had to basically retract that by saying, oh, by the way, they all died. Oopsie daisy. This is ABC, by the way. This is what the film is based off of there, but it's no really like good guy versus bad guy outside the terrorists, obviously. It's really just a great retelling of everything that took place there based on eyewitness accounts, based on videos from that time period. They really try to recreate everything to be as accurate to that time portion as it can be. It's a very, very strong movie. Not as uplifting as the other two, I could say that one here, but yeah, this one was definitely a very, very strong one. Yeah, and it is probably, if you really look back on it, it's probably the worst news moment of all time when you really consider that you told everyone that they lived, and it turns out they didn't. So yeah, that was kind of a big oopsie, as PD probably would like to say. But the movie is still very, very good, very, very strong. If you guys remember a film called Live from Baghdad with Michael Keaton from about 20 years ago, it plays up a lot of the same way as that film. So if you did like that movie, you'll probably like this one too. So that's my number 7. My number 6 is The Bike Riders. Not really much more I want to say about this movie that we've already talked about with a couple other guys. Very, very strong movie. I like the acting of Tom Hardy, Austin Butler, Jodie Comer did a very good job with this movie. It's a movie about 1% biker gang. So if you like Sons of Anarchy, if you like outlaw biker culture, you're definitely going to like this movie. A lot of cameos and performances here that I think are very, very good as well. So definitely would check this one out if you guys haven't seen it yet. It is one of the best films that came out this year. So that's The Bike Riders. Number 5 on my list is a South Korean film called Hijack 1971. This was a film that it really goes to show you just how deep the hatred of North Korea and South Korea goes. And Spencer's in the chat, so he knows this more than anyone. People think that Asians don't like other groups of people. They don't even like each other. Like, if you look at the whole beef between the Koreans and the Japanese and the Chinese, and even if in Korea itself, North or South, there's a lot of deep-seated hatred going on there in that region. This is a story about a North Korean hijacker who wanted to be a hero to South Korea, so he decided he's going to defect to North Korea by kidnapping a group of hostages on a plane and flying it into North Korean territory because he thinks that he's going to be a hero by doing so. It really goes into kind of his motivations of why he does this, and look, very justifiably, he got screwed over on a couple of instances, which led to the death of his mother. He holds the nation responsible as a result. While you sympathize with what the character is doing, you still understand that his motives are very, very bad. It doesn't try to make it seem like he's not a bad guy. He very much is. You also have the heroics of our good guy here, who's a fighter pilot who just so happens to be involved in a similar situation a year earlier. Now he's directly involved in the situation, and he quite literally does everything in his power to save the lives of the people that are on board. It is a very, very strong a theme of heroism in this movie. So if you're looking for, like I said, another movie where the good guys win at the end, go back and check this movie. It's called Hijack 1971, one of the strongest films of 2024. So I recommend that movie for you. My number 4 movie of the year is a film called Hijack. Jack. I'm sorry, in a film called Kill, I should say. Movie called Kill. It's the Indian film about the bunch of people on the train. The whole concept here is that, you know, you have a military guard who's trying to win back his girlfriend before she gets hitched in an arranged marriage, I should say. And as a result of this, they know that there's a wealthy family on board. So a family of thieves board the train in order to rob the people. They end up kidnapping and killing a few people on board. And he realizes that he's basically the only one who can stop him and his buddy. It becomes essentially like a 45-on-2 type situation. One of the things that really I give this film more credit for than any other film in this whole genre of John Wick clones, everyone dies, everyone gets stabbed and shot. This movie really gives gravity to the loss of human life. And what I mean by this is you'll watch like a John Wick clone, people get shot in the head all the time, they'll get stabbed, and it just moves on to the next scene. You feel nothing for any of the characters that are on screen. This movie, even though they're the villains, there's an emotional impact to every single kill here, because it's like that person that just died was related to this person. That person that just died was the uncle of that person. And you see the characters breaking down, and like there's really emotional weight here to the film. It's not just mindless death after mindless death. The people who die in this film, the ones who either die because of arrogance or vengeance, wherever the case may be, you feel it, and it really turns the genre into a light that we hadn't seen in quite some time. I think the John Wick movies have really desensitized people to violence in these type of films, and this one really puts that sensitivity back to where it needs to be. So for me, and that reason alone, I think is one of the strongest movies of the year. If you're looking for like one of those hardcore action movies, this is definitely one to have on top of the list. It's called Kill, a great movie that came out this year. I'll go here to number 3 here. Number 3 is Juror Number 2. This is a film that Rob had mentioned earlier. Don't disagree with anything that Rob said here. The story here is that a guy gets called into jury duty. He has a wife at home, a pregnant wife at home. He's getting ready to start his own family. And then as he's listening to the details of the case about a woman who was seemingly killed by her ex-boyfriend, they got into a fight. She got found dead later on in a ditch, feeling like she was beaten to death. Turns out he was the guy who was responsible for her death. That a year ago, he hit her with a car while he was drunk, thought that he hit a deer, couldn't find the body, went home, didn't think about it, and he realized he was responsible. So now he's in a position where he's trying to prove the innocence of the boyfriend who everyone thinks is guilty, but he can't reveal why he thinks that this guy's innocent, because then he revealed that he's the person who killed her in the first place. It's a moral dilemma on a multitude of levels, because it's like, if you tell the truth and you let go of an innocent man who quite literally is going to lose his life, you're going to lose yours as a result of it. So it's like, where do you find the line? Do you try to protect you and your family, or do you protect the guy who you know for a fact is innocent, who's about to lose everything? The Warner Brothers absolutely messed up by not releasing this in movie theaters. They tried to dump this off on Max, then it got like a limited release. It's like, it's Clint Eastwood. It's arguably the final movie he's ever going to direct, and it's one of the best movies of the year. Warner Brothers, there's a reason why they're in the shape that they're in right now, because they have absolutely no idea what they're doing whatsoever. That's their own fault. Jury Number 2. As far as domestic releases goes, this is the best film of 2024 by far. Absolutely recommend it to anyone who's looking for a really good film. Number 2, real quick, is a film that I talked about a little bit here. You guys have read recently, Officer Black Belt. Some of you guys think, well, wait a second, didn't you say Officer Black Belt was your best movie of the year? Yeah, until I saw a movie that I saw last night, which I'll talk about here in a second. Officer Black Belt, South Korean film, is on Netflix right now if you guys want to check it out. It is a movie that absolutely will not be made in America anytime soon, because it's literally a story about a karate champion who joins a police force to do good, and as a result of doing good, he basically hunts down and finds sexual offenders, especially child offenders, and kicks the ever-loving crap out of them for justice and the law. And that's something, a movie premise you definitely will not hear out of the mainstream domestic box office today. This is a film that's kind of a dark comedy, but one thing I really truly like about this is that it doesn't diminish the reality and the severity of the situation at hand. A lot of dark comedies do. Dark comedies in these day and age, they always try to downplay the seriousness of certain situations, like death for perspective, by belittling it in a lot of sense, to the point where you can't really take it seriously anymore. This one doesn't do that. You see the gravity of the situation at hand, but it does a great job of mixing in the comedic elements elements of the story with the real life elements of the story, which makes it work. It doesn't belittle our protagonist for being a gamer who has gamer friends, and you would think in the context of a film like that there would be a bunch of nerds, but you find out that they all have very, very useful skills that come into helping our protagonist here. He's obviously following in the lead of the main probation officer, who's kind of like his father figure, his role model within the force, teaching him the ins and outs and really inspiring him to want to do more to help those, especially those who can't defend themselves, which is why he's really drawn to helping women and children in this instance. He wants to be a force for good. You talk about positive movies, you don't really get more positive movies than this. This is all about, law, order, justice, and you get to see a bunch of perverts get the crap kicked out of them as well. This one, to me, is one of the more intriguing concepts of the entire year, and definitely comes out being one of the best movies of 2024. Officer Black Belt, you can find that one on Netflix right now if you want to watch it on your own time. Definitely recommend it. Now, what is this movie that I just watched last night that ended up knocking that film off of my list? There's a film that I was going to watch. I thought it was a 2025 film. Turns out it got released literally 4 days before the end of the year in South Korea. We just now got it here now. I watched it last night and I thought to myself, I'm going to have to rearrange my entire list because there's no way I can leave this film off of my film here. It is a film called Harbin. And Harbin is a story about going back to the 1900s, early 1900s here, where Korea was essentially under Japanese occupation. They had a treaty, but the terms of the treaty basically made it so that Japan was very close to making Korea a Japanese colony. So a group of separatist independent activists decide to go at war with the Japanese government to try to regain Korea's independence here. It doesn't go well for them at first. They lose a lot of guys, but they still have a handful of people left. So it's a story about them going into Russia, of all places, to find the former prime minister of Japan, to essentially assassinate him, because they feel like if he dies, then the movement to turn Korea into a Japanese colony basically dissipates as a result of this, which did happen throughout the course later on. It's like 30 years later, but it did happen. This is a wartime epic. It is an espionage epic. There's a whole bunch of elements to the story that just generally works very, very well. Early on, you see like the brutality of the winter conditions that they have to do, because they're in basically Russia at the height of winter, and everyone knows how bad that is. Axe Nazis. This is a film that really shows in the early stages of espionage, of dealing with intelligence agencies and finding moles within your operation and figuring out what to do with them. And you have a group of people here who are really just led by trying to quite literally save what is left of their nation, because they realize that if they fail, then Korea is essentially going to end up being, like a China-Taiwan situation here, where they're not really going to be free. They're going to be under the oppression of a bigger government here, with the implications of World War I and World War II that were on the horizon as well. It meant a lot of bad things if they did not find success in their goal here. Very, very smart film. The cinematography here is absolutely outstanding. From the scenes of them walking on the ice here, which is the early part of this film, like you just feel every aspect of this movie from top to bottom. This feels like a massive budget movie, but it actually isn't a massive budget movie at all. Like, these are films like, it looks better than a movie that costs like $200 million. Just put it that way. I know for a fact they didn't spend that kind of money on this film, but it is, honestly, I did not expect a movie to be this good to come out this late in the year. Like I said, this came out on the 24th in Korea, which means that it came out like literally a week before New Year's Eve. So technically it is a 2024 film. It's not a 2025 movie. I watched it and I was absolutely amazed and astounded by what I saw here. No way that I could not put this movie on the top of my list compared to all the other ones for every single technical aspect, the acting, the cinematography, the cut scenes, the fighting, everything about this movie is great. It's called Harbin. It's in theaters right now. It's in a limited release, but depending on what neighborhood you live on, you may be able to see this one now in theaters while you can. Go out and see this movie. It is absolutely the best movie that I've seen so far this year. And that is my top 10 list. So I will give you guys a moment to kind of reflect there, because I know I kind of rambled on for a bit. But any notes of the movies that I listed there in my top 10?
Sounds like it's a good sign for 2025.
Yeah, right? I mean, we ended the year hot. I'll just say it there. So no other notes there?
I guess I need to see juror number 2. I watched the trailer and I was like, I don't want to watch it if he's the guy who hit her. And the whole movie is just him like being conflicted about it. But if it's good, I guess there's something to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I just there's so few movies that actually explore like morality anymore, like actual like nuts and bolts morality that I was just like, oh, we get one of these? Sweet.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe it's because I spend so much time watching old movies and older like courtroom dramas, film noir, westerns, where that's really the whole thing. It's like because people were I hate being like this. I sound like such an old man, but I'm like audiences used to understand morality pretty clearly, like like this, you don't do that, you know, you can do that, you know, do this in this situation. It was just nice to be able to get that into like it's a movie with a beating heart and a moral right and wrong at the center of it. And I don't know, it just, for as much as like there's been gray or what is it, moral ambiguity, it hasn't been done very well, you know, the last decade or so. And so it's like I'm ready for anybody that can just tell a story and has a point of view and has a perspective.
Like even in the Harbin movie, the big point of contention in that film is that in the earlier part they had a battle where they won and they kind of defeated the Japanese forces, and the leader of the Korean side decides not to kill the military leader of Japan, and that ends up being a mistake because the Japan leader then comes back later on and ambushes his men. They lose a lot of guys as a result of this, and they all blame him because it's like, well, if he had killed this guy, most of our men would still be alive. So it really delves in that realm of morality where it's like, was that the right thing to do, to let a guy go and not kill someone who was basically just a soldier of war? Or if you did kill them, you would have saved a lot of your guys. It's like you got to balance the line of like who's in the right and who's in the wrong here. So it does have a lot of very interesting questions like that too. So, but yeah, that's it. That's my entire list. So that's all of the best movies that came out in 2024. I think we hit a
Except for
good
Sonic.
patch. What do you say?
Because there's Sonic.
Oh yeah, no, Sonic did not make the list. I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but it just did not make the list here. Sorry about that.
And listen, I tried watching The Brutalist today, and
3.5
yeah,
hours.
people are not gonna sit for that. I'm sorry. Listen, I am the exact type of person that a movie like that is made for. And here's the thing: it's beautifully made. It's beautifully constructed. It is as miserable of a story of a movie that I've seen in like the last 5 or 10 years. It's just, it's all about the immigrant experience and the immigrant being fucked by America. Like, it's just like, you know what I mean? It's like the most like, you know, miserablest sort of like, don't come to America because we'll just fuck you over. It's, you know, it's like, okay, I mean, and what it's, don't get me wrong, it's artistic, it's, you know, it's not, it doesn't beat you over the head with its ideas, but that was my takeaway. And Adrian Brody's good in it, and like it's, I think it's worth seeing for cinephiles, but for normies, I would definitely say don't go see that, because it's 3.5 hours long and it's very slow and deliberate and takes its time, which again I like, but you have to be in the right mood for something like that.
Yep. All right. Well, with that said, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap things up here because we're done with all our lists. So next week here on the show, it'll be episode 100 of the Movie Club, and we'll be talking about the absolute dog shit movies that came out in 2024, the absolute worst of the worst of the worst. And our good buddy Rick will be back next week, so that should be fun here too, to listen to him talk about Argyle for 30 minutes. We'll try to rein him in. But yeah, we'll have some other guests joining us here next week as well, because there were a few people who just couldn't make it here due to the time schedule, but they do want to come back next week here as well. So we'll have a lot of people talking about the absolute worst of the worst here on our final episode of the Movie Club here in episode 100. We're wrapping things up there. So I'm going to give you guys the spotlight here and promote anything you guys got coming up. Is Iron still here? Iron. All right, I think Iron is maybe having some technical difficulties there. So I guess we're gonna start with Sarah. Beautiful Sarah, how's it going?
It's going great. I've been doing a lot of writing, so not much on the internet, but you can follow me on Twitter or X at HTWA_Sarah. I talk about movies there sometimes.
Sometimes. You got any like stage plays you want to promote too? I mean, you could throw those out there as well.
No, I'm working on Adam's Family right now. I'm playing Grandmama, so that's fun.
Nice.
And then we've got some auditions coming up.
All right then, Rob, what you got coming up, man?
It is a new year. I'm not sure what the hell that means, but it basically just means I'm back to watching movies on a regular basis. And football season's coming to an end, so that's going to mean even more time to watch movies. But you know, and I don't know what the hell's going on with January. The release schedule looks like shit, but I'm gonna really try to do that thing that I say I'm gonna do every year, which is actually review movies as they come out. I mean, and really, it's just like being depressed. Last year, it was like Lisa Frankenstein, Argyle, like, you know, it was just not good movies to start. So, not that that's any excuse, because it's not. But yeah, I'm gonna try to do that this year. So you can always follow me on my Twitter for that. You know, that's where I try to keep it interesting. I really am trying to get away from things that distract me and are not conducive to you know, producing content. So we'll try to do that this year, even though Twitter is just a huge time waster. So, but yeah, as always, you can just follow me over there. And you know, I like being part of the Barroom Podcast on Tuesdays, so that's always fun. So enjoy early part of 2025.
Yeah, Iron is having some audio issues. He was having audio issues earlier in the show, so that's why he wasn't here with us. But shout out to Iron. I will give you guys a link to his stuff here, so you guys can check him out as well. But letting you guys know what we got coming up here tomorrow night. Bible Lens will be back. We'll be doing a 2-part series with our good buddy Tiny Will Not Be Boxed. Very, very interesting girl. Has deep ties to obviously Judaism, and obviously has a lot of family ties with Christianity as well. We're gonna have a good 2-week talk specifically about Judaism tomorrow, and then next week more on biblical prophecy. So we'll have a good, interesting conversation. I love being able to have sit downs. Now, obviously, we've done sit downs with Rob was on one episode here. We did with Spencer. We had Shaq Surf on a few times as well. Sarah, maybe one of these days I'll get you on here for a show. Who knows? Who knows? But I can see my voice is still a little bit shot, still working on recovering that, but that's going to be Sunday night, tomorrow night. Tuesday, we're back with the bar room. As you guys know, I'm kind of updating some of the thumbnails on my streams here. Something, little project we're working on here for 2025. It seems to be working out pretty well here. We'll be back on Tuesday, normal schedule after all the holiday stuff. And like I said, next Saturday afternoon at 2 p.m., we'll be back here. Worst films of 2024 all together. So thank you very much for guys for joining me here for another show. To all you guys who joined us in the chat, thank you guys for listening to this one. We will see you guys next week here for the final episode of the movie club before we start working on the movie house, which I know I've told you guys, I've teased this a lot. I haven't given you guys a lot of details yet. I will give you guys details when we get there, but it's coming soon. So until then, adios, goodbye, and good night.